Good afternoon or good morning, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 2020 ICH NGO Conference, ICH and Resilience in Crisis. My name is Jinyoung Seo, Assistant Program Specialist at the International Information Center for Intangible Cultural Heritage at in the Asia Pacific region under the auspices of UNESCO, ICHCAP. Working within the framework of the 2003 Convention for the Safeguarding Intangible Cultural Heritage, ICHCAP operates information and networking projects to support UNESCO's strategic plan for with us 48 member states in the Asia Pacific regions. Today, ICHCAP and ICH NGO Forum are co-hosting this conference for 2 days from today. I'm very pleased that we can hold this conference with full support and cooperation at all under the hard situation caused by COVID-19. Before we start the conference in earnest, Director General KEUM Hyung of the ICHCAP is in presence to is waiting all of you in Jeonju, because except if there was no corona situation, it had held in Jeonju, Korea. So please welcome Director General KEUM Hyung for the welcoming remarks.
Thank you, Jinyoung. How are you? Very nice to see all of you. I'm in Jeonju, not Jeju. 2 years ago, we organized this kind of meeting in Jeju Island, but now in Jeonju. COVID-19 is spreading very fast through the globe. As times goes by, there are growing concerns about whether we will ever return to our everyday lives, where we used to walk, talk, exercise, eat, laugh, and have fun together. The COVID-19 has changed a lot how we think of ourselves. In the meantime, it is pleased ICHCAP and ICH NGO Forum co-organize the 2020 ICH NGO Conference from today. Thanks to the development of the online technology, we opened the call for NGOs worldwide. Therefore, 10 NGOs from Colombia, Hong Kong, Finland, India, Italy, Pakistan, Spain, Singapore, USA, Zimbabwe, and OECD, of course, Korea, all participated this year. The title of this conference is ICH and Resilience in Crisis. The value illumine when the situation is in hardship, so is the intangible cultural heritage. This conference will ground the diverse stakeholders centering on NGOs to overcome the crisis for the bright future. Additionally, there has been much discussion about how we can induce collective intelligence to solve problems based on cooperation. Here, I would like to emphasize information sharing and active networking, which are core values along with our works of ICHCAP. There is a saying that we all have the ability. The difference is how we use it. Yes, I believe that it is our roles to maximize the ability to read the difference. When we have the more information we share, the stronger the power becomes. Here, gathered NGOs will talk about their country's situation, creative ways of safeguarding ICH and its transmission, even influence and art in general. I wish a fruitful and constructive discussion during this conference. Lastly, I would like to extend my gratitude to our colleagues in ICH NGO forums, especially Ms. Mega Nomgad, Ms. Reme Sakul, and their teams. This conference would not be possible without their dedication and tireless works. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Director General. Now, I would like to invite Ms. Meg Nomgar, Chief of the ICH NGO Forum Steering Committee, for the opening remarks. As a co-organizer, as Director General Kyung mentioned, we could hold this conference by collaborating each other. Please welcome her.
Dear colleagues around the world, my name is Meg Nomgård and I am the Director of the Land of Legends in Sweden. However, today I'm here as the Chair of ICH NGO Forum. The Forum has the great pleasure, together with ICHCAP, to welcome you to this conference. This year, that we are soon to finish, has indeed been a very special year for all of us. No matter where in the world we live, we have faced an unprecedented situation that we have never had to live in before. Times have been tough, but in these times we have had the opportunity to learn and find new ways to continue our purpose and our mission. It is clear that intangible cultural heritage has and still is helping people overcome this global crisis. COVID-19 has certainly showed how important ICH is to all of us, and especially to its communities, whether in large bustling cities or in isolated islands, come to identify themselves, their past and their futures. It is who they are as individuals and groups, forging their stories for those to come and leaving behind a heritage to be proud of. There is no value great enough to be given to this as part of the creation of humanity. The ICH NGO Forum gathers NGOs from all over the world, all accredited by UNESCO under its 2003 convention, in 6 different regions. Our learning process never stops. The amalgamation of experiences that we continue to share and learn from, whether from Europe, Africa, Asia, America, or the Arab states, is a community that we cherish and proud ourselves on. Our utmost commitment is to the values of the 2003 convention, to the sentiment that intangible cultural heritage belongs to humanity as a whole, and is a means to better the lives of communities at the local, national, and international levels. We understand that there is always work to improve. We understand that sometimes there is a gap between those who are in charge of creating the policies affecting ICH and those who these policies are placed upon. And we believe it's our duty to help to bridge this gap, to allow our ICH communities to thrive, develop, and prosper. This includes communities in all regions equally. Therefore, large geographical imbalance in NGOs between regions is a challenge that we, along with the UNESCO Secretariat and the Intergovernmental Committee, is an issue which has occupied our agenda for some time. The ICH NGO Forum, to this regard, has launched several discussions to develop recommendations to enhance the participation of NGOs to the underrepresented regions, including Latin America, Africa, and the Arab states. This is still a work in progress, and the participation of NGOs from these regions in this conference is certainly welcome in this regard. And during this global pandemic, our work has become more important than ever. We recognize our challenges loud and clear, and we know that solutions can only exist with increasing communication and exchange, which is why our forum is delighted to be collaborating with ICHCAP on this initiative. I look forward to listening to and watching all contributions today and tomorrow, and I am extremely impressed and grateful to all the experts who will participate. I wish all participants a fruitful learning experience and wish the best of luck to our partners, ICHCAP. Thank you for being such an ideal partner to our forum during the years, for advancing the work of the ICH NGO Forum, including your collaboration in our Heritage Alive publication, and for carrying out your mission with the utmost integrity and participation. To many more collaborations to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Magnomgard. Now, Mr. Tim Curtis, Chief of the Living Heritage Entity of UNESCO, is in presence to congratulate our conference. Please welcome him.
Dear colleagues, it is a pleasure for me to address you here today and welcome you to the 2020 edition of the ICH NGO Conference. For those who don't know me, my name is Tim Curtis. I'm the Secretary of the Convention for the Safeguarding of Intangible Cultural Heritage, and we're very pleased at this collaborative effort between ICHCAP and the NGO Forum for this conference, which is taking place online. Indeed, 2020 has been a very challenging year for all of us, and I can only express how much appreciated this timely discussion on the topic of ICH and resilience in crisis is, which is as the theme of this year's edition. Indeed, along with many other aspects of our lives, living heritage has been deeply affected by the ongoing pandemic. And as you know, COVID-19 is causing many disruptions around the globe to the enactment and transmission of living heritage. Some of these are temporary, some of these may be more permanent. Physical distancing and lockdown are leading to the cancellation or postponement of many festivities and rituals. And in some cases, the access to spaces, places, and materials needed for the practice of living heritage has been restricted or is still restricted. The pandemic is also having a strong impact on the livelihoods of many of bearers of ICH, and many of whom largely operating in the informal sector are experiencing significant loss of income. On the other hand, what we can see is that the dynamic nature of living heritage also provides communities with a valuable resource and mean to face some of the evolving environmental and challenges, the evolving environment and the challenges caused by this crisis. And that's why in the Secretariat, we invited our partners to share experiences related to living heritage during the pandemic. And as many of you already know, an online survey was created aiming to enhance our common learning and inspire communities through the exchange of experiences. This survey was shared among the convention's network of partners, which includes the many accredited NGOs, and nearly 300 responses were collected so far. And I take this opportunity to really thank those who've contributed to the survey and those whose experiences are of invaluable importance for us to understand what's going on with living heritage today. And allow me, I'll show you some very brief results of the survey, just to give some illustrations, and maybe they might be useful for your discussion through the next few days. First of all, I'd like to say that the survey allowed the Secretariat to witness the extraordinary courage of communities really across the world, who were all exploring creative ways of maintaining their practices despite the challenging context they face. For instance, throughout the world, we saw songs performed from balconies and windows in cities all around the world. One NGO from Italy and an accredited NGO, the Cultural Association Circola della Zamponia, and I apologize for my pronunciation, did report on such practices, stressing how they're bringing out the role of music as a significant source from which urban communities can draw energy to face the difficult times. And of course, here, those of us here in Paris witnessed similar things during our first lockdown, when these songs were played to express support for health workers on the front line, but also really served as a way of strengthening social cohesion during those times. And of course, different forms of living heritage are also being used to communicate information about COVID-19. We had a reported experience from a non-governmental organization in Cambodia, the Cambodian Living Arts, where a prominent artist played the Cambodian traditional guitar, the chapey, to promote public health instructions. the survey also showed us how the pandemic is triggering the revitalization of some practices, particularly among younger generations who spend more time at home. And so we've seen some cases where family-based crafts workshops were then instigated during the lockdown. This was an experience reported by an NGO from Iran, and showed us how carpet weaving and other forms of traditional craftsmanship were somehow revived by people, particularly the younger generation, staying in households. Of course, local systems of food production are also encountering renewed interest. And an NGO in Mexico reported, the Center of Indigenous Arts, about Indigenous people in the region of Veracruz strengthening their aid networks and supporting each other through local food production means. And finally, another case showcased how the pandemic nurtured reflections on the roles of the importance of living heritage through public debates like the one today, which gathered us from different parts of the world. Of course, this in a way shows the dual role of living heritage in situations of emergencies. And as we've been, the committee of the convention and NGOs and others have been discussing over the last few years, that living heritage in emergency situations plays a kind of dual role. It can be, of course, it can be threatened, and in that case, actions need to be taken to try to ensure its transmission. But at the same time, it's also a tool of resilience to mitigate threats and help communities, and shows us really how the safeguarding of living heritage in these situations of emergencies is really of utmost importance, and is really part and parcel and indivisible from the protection of lives and the well-being of people who are the bearers of ICH. So the safeguarding of ICH starts, of course, with the protection of people. On this positive note, I'm also pleased to inform you that the operational principles and modalities for the safeguarding of intangible cultural heritage have now been formally approved by the General Assembly of States Parties last September, and this set of principles and modalities can provide governments and communities with valuable guidance in the safeguarding efforts during these challenging times. So, of course, and without further delay, I'd like to take really this opportunity to give a great thanks to ICHCAP and the ICH NGO Forum again for this joint initiative. I commend you for your active participation and commitment to this important global debate on ICH and resilience in crisis. We really look forward to the outcomes of this document and the discussions going forward. I wish you all great discussions, and thank you once again very much for giving me the opportunity to address you briefly before the workshop begins. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tim Curtis, for the congratulatory remarks. Now, before we start the first session, the special lecture about the resilience analysis system will be given by Dr. Roberto Martinez, head of the OECD in Mexico. Based on the analysis research done by OECD, he will give implication in this field, focusing on the resilience. Please welcome him.
Thank you. Okay, I'm delighted to have the privilege of sharing the OECD view on resilience and the methodology behind the analysis of resilient systems. So let me just try to share my screen now. Let me just a moment. Okay. Okay, just a moment. Okay, I'm opening. Okay. So let me just stress for the time being that we face unprecedented challenges, as you all know. And then what characterizes the new context that we are facing is a very deep economic and social crisis. And that is something that I wish to convey to you in this occasion. Maybe just an NGO's perspective. So first of all, what is resilience? We probably have discussed enough in the multilateral assistance environment about the different aspects that relate to resilience. And so I would like to summarize only that we have the three key aspects of resilience. So it's the capacity to surmount shocks, external shocks, or disruptive phenomena. And then we have absorptive capacity as a first layer of resilience. And that is the ability of a system to prepare for, mitigate, or prevent negative impacts using predetermined coping responses in order to preserve and restore essential basic structures and functions. And then we have adaptive capacity, and that is the ability of a system to adjust, modify, or change its characteristics and actions to moderate potential future damage and to take advantage of opportunities so that it continue to function without major qualitative changes in function or structural identities. Examples of adaptive capacity include diversification of livelihoods, involvement of the private sector in delivering basic services, and introducing drought-resistant seed, for example. And then we have transformative capacity, which is the ability to create a fundamentally new system so that the shock will no longer have an impact. This can be necessary when ecological, economic, or social structures make the existing system untenable. Examples of transformative capacity include the introduction of conflict resolution mechanisms, urban planning measures, and other actions to stamp out corruption, for example. And so let me stress at this point that in the face of an external shock like no other shock that we have witnessed in decades, like the COVID-19 pandemic, we are faced with the opportunity of overcoming a great challenge in a way that we can bring about transformative capacity into many different subsystems of social and civilizatory resilience, if you will. So this is something that we can come up with, we can continue in a discussion after we set the tone of our framework of resilient system analysis. So the bottom line is boosting resilience involves actively understanding the risk landscape and how it impacts on systems. That is how society functions in each context. So we need to, it is about determining at which layer of society those risks are best managed, applying a set of resilience principles to strengthen the system's capacity to absorb shocks or to adapt and transform so that they are less exposed to shocks. So if we go into the concept node, what is the system, or how do we appraise a system from our methodology? So resilient systems analysis uses a systems approach. A system could be many things, including a unit of society, for example, an individual or household, a community or a state, of the natural environment, for example, a forest, or a physical entity, for example, an urban infrastructure network. So the system used as an example in these guidelines comes from the sustainable livelihoods approach as seen from our perspective at the OECD. So a livelihood comprises the capabilities, assets, and activities required for a means of living. A livelihood is sustainable when it can cope with and recover from stresses and shocks and maintain or enhance its capabilities and assets both now and in the future while not undermining the natural resource base. So under our sustainable livelihoods approach, the well-being of a community depends on a system with 6 different categories of assets or capitals. So that is financial capital, human capital, natural capital, physical capital, political capital, and social capital. The assets that make up each of these categories of capital will differ from context to context. So from our perspective of what a resilient system analysis is all about, is a toolkit to systematically analyze resilience and then integrate resilience aspects into the development and humanitarian programming through a step-by-step approach to resilient systems analysis. So a tool that helps field practitioners to prepare for and facilitate a successful multi-stakeholder resilience analysis workshop, for example, and then design a roadmap to boost the resilience of communities and societies, and then to integrate the results of the analysis into their development and humanitarian programming. And that is essential in the way that we look at activities from a grassroots approach that is ever more vital in the face of rebuilding communities and rebuilding regions in the context of the very dire and very deep and very worrisome consequences of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. So resilient system analysis will provide the key actors in the field with a shared view of the risk landscape that people face, an understanding of the broader system that people need for their all-around well-being, an analysis of how the risk landscape affects the key components of the well-being system, which components are resilient, which not, and why a shared understanding of power dynamics and how the use of, or misuse of power helps or hinders people's access to the assets they need to cope with shocks. And then based on all of that, a shared vision of what needs to be done to boost resilience in the system and how to integrate these aspects into policies, strategies, and development efforts at every layer of society. So how can we use a resilient system analysis? Many, in that context, in the development assistant or official development assistant context, many donors are requiring their partners to base their programming on a theory of change linked to a log frame analysis. The resilience of system analysis facilitates both of these. The outputs of a resilient system analysis provide a platform for constructing a theory of change, often used in development programming to support overall analysis, strategy, and critical thinking. So this type of analysis provides information for the three key steps in constructing a theory of change. So analyzing the context, exploring assumptions and hypotheses for changes in the future, and assessing evidence for future change. So that's in broad terms, the context. So we aim at producing a roadmap following this theory of change logic. So through this type of analysis, we aim to develop log frames that are often used to document and monitor humanitarian and development programs. So, so as to provide a concrete vision of the desired program impact and outcomes, to show how project outputs can contribute to these outcomes and impact, and to providing a better and more coherent risk information for the assumptions component of the log frame. So the main purpose of resilient system analysis is to provide valuable inputs into policies, strategies, and programs rather than to support detailed project design. And so in this context, what we talk about is following this methodology through 4 steps. Step 1 is defining the governance and scope of any given strategy, and that applies, of course, to things such as, for example, grassroots social entrepreneurship initiatives, or for example, and then closely linked to that, of course, we have intangible cultural heritage initiatives that are linked to local development. So first we need to define the key stakeholders and how these stakeholders are relevant to local or grassroots development goal. And then we go to step 2, which is pre-analysis and briefing pack. And so that's a complex process, but then we talk about how to develop ways to validate methodologies of interactive or participatory dynamics that can feed back into this methodology of what it means to develop the roadmap that is acceptable to relevant stakeholders at the grassroots level. And then we go to workshop methodologies. And then we have 5 steps of the workshop. First, we have 5 modules going from risk, stresses, and their impact on systems analysis. And then we go to the analysis of the characteristics of the system and its component. Then we go to a 3rd step of analysis of stakeholders and processes influencing a given system. Then we go to identifying gaps in the system's resilience. And then we go to developing a roadmap to strengthen resilience. And then that's something that it's easy to say, but it's very difficult to really implement. And so that's why this is something that we talk about from a very general, broad perspective. But if it's to become real or implementable, that is the domain of grassroots stakeholders and leaders such as NGOs, for example. So using this roadmap to boost resilience shows what policy and programming changes are needed to boost resilience in a particular context, prioritized in terms of A, urgent actions, and B, medium-term actions, and of course, actions that can be started much later. So in most contexts, individual organizations and actors will choose which of the actions of the roadmap to implement based on specific mandates or expertise, programming timeframes, and resources. Different actors can do certain things. Other actors can use their power to influence change, and in other areas, a shared advocacy strategy could be useful. All of the actions prioritized by the roadmap should be picked up by at least one actor. So this is, in very broad terms, what I would bring to your attention in terms of, in a way of setting the tone of a more richer, broader, detailed discussion as to what it means to bring resilience or what it means to build resilience in this very challenging ongoing context of a pandemic. And in that sense, it never as today is it true that NGOs make the big difference in building back social and community local resilience in this very key arena of the intangible cultural heritage. And so I because of the time limitations, I think that there's just a way of setting the tone. Definitely we would, in the course of this full day and the second day of this forum, there will be much to be said as to how in very different specific context, resilience can be built, strengthened in order to not only reactivate, because that's something that from, in our case, the OECD, we hear a lot from different stakeholders to reactivate economic and the economy or social, the social tissue, but it's about something even more challenging, which is to reconstruct social communities, to reconstruct economies, to build back better what has been hit by an unprecedented crisis like the global pandemic of the COVID-19. So in this sense, I very much thank you for the privilege of having this space to share our thoughts and definitely to continue our dialogue and discussion as to what it is to what it means to build our communities in a stronger, more sustainable and more resilient new social pact. And then NGOs have a crucial contribution to that endeavor. So thank you very much.
You brought up the very interesting points, which should be considered for safeguarding one of the way of safeguarding intangible cultural heritage in mirroring the resilience system analysis. Now, I would like to move on to today's session. The theme of the first session is in the Vortex, COVID-19 era, roles of NGOs for safeguarding intangible cultural heritage. Director General Hyung will serve as a moderator today. Before we get started, I would like to have a little announcement for the public. If you have any question during the presentation, please type them on YouTube chat box or Facebook chat box for Korean. We will have time for a question at the end. And also you may download all the information like abstracts and the concept note from ICHCAP's official website under the ICH webinar series menu. Without further pause, please welcome today's moderator, Director General Kim. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Young. I appreciate much for your nice introduction. And I'm very happy to talking with you. As you know, the first session of the conference is composed of the 4 presentators, and then each one have 15 minutes. Totally 4 presentators have the 1 hour. And then because of the time limitation, I will give a signal 2 minutes before your presentations. Firstly, I'd like to invite Ms. Carolina Bermudez for the first. Carolina Bermudez is a partnership and institutional management coordination in Fundación Etnollano. As an anthropologist and a philosopher, she has worked with indigenous groups in Colombia and Australia over the last 10 years, focusing on local empowerment. The floor is yours. Please.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me well? Okay, so hello everyone. First of all, I would like to start by thanking the team of Etnollano Foundation, since this has been a team effort. We have discussed these topics and we have brought with us this presentation to share with you today. So we have titled it Uncovering the Veil of Immaterial Cultural Heritage towards an autonomous management of well-being as well as cultural and territorial preservation. And we have decided to focus on the case of the Piaroa indigenous people of Mataben Forest, which is located in the Colombian Amazonia. So first, I would like to start by talking a bit about Etnollano Foundation and the type of work that we do. So we have been working in the Amazon region for more than 30 years, and we have focused our work in 4 different areas. The first one is governance and environmental management. We've got women's health and gender, intercultural education, and community economies. This includes handicraft production, tourism, and other initiatives. And we have set up in the center this community, which is called Urbana Community, and it's of the Piaroa people. And behind the group, we have the Churwata, or Pureido, which is a traditional construction, and it's the center of the Piaroa culture. So it is the place where the elders can sit with the younger generations to transmit all the knowledge. So one of our discussions with the team is how for the Etnollano Foundation, immaterial cultural heritage is not a result on itself for us, but it serves both as a catalyst and as a mean to achieve or to work towards community well-being, as well as for cultural and territorial preservation. And I will share and talk a bit more about this throughout the presentation. So I wanted to share with you this map so that you can see a bit the areas that we work. And this is mostly in the indigenous reserves of the Orinoco and the Eastern Colombian Amazon. So as you can see, the number of hectares is very large. So it's 4,843,900 hectares. And we work with an estimated population of 55,000 indigenous people from around 20 ethnic different groups. So as you will see in the map, the red areas are the areas where we have centered our work. And you will see other reservation indigenous areas as well as national parks. So as I was saying before, from this experience, we have understood how immaterial cultural heritage works both as a catalyst and as a mean for building community well-being. And we have seen this very clear throughout this pandemic, and how ICH serves as a base for these communities to strengthen their well-being, and of course, resilience as well. So this ICH understanding has allowed us to envisage our role as an NGO as that of supporting and accompanying community-based processes that entail ICH as a way of improving people's well-being. This case study that we have chosen of the Piaroa indigenous people is a beautiful one because we were able to visit them just before the lockdown in March. So by just a little bit, we almost stayed with them for all these months. And working with this indigenous group has allowed us to see how ICH and all the practices, the knowledge, the skills have served traditional groups for their survival, identifying those elements that may be important and valuable for today's context as well. So in alignment with the past idea, all of these ICH systems serve today's generations for their survival, for their sustainability. So it's not only because it's beautiful or because it's culturally valuable, but because it serves many other economic, environmental, socio-cultural, of course, functions in their livelihoods. So we have chosen 3 ways in which we have seen our role as an NGO in this process. The first one is supporting local ICH research. Second, the importance of building bridges. And third, accompanying the Piaroa's own education process. So this is the first element that we want to share, and it's the support of local ICH research. And although we have working on this during many years, during the last year we started a strong process supported by the British Council. And local researchers decided to choose their own topic. Some of them started to research around agroecological systems, asking the elders about seeds and traditional ways of working their crops. Others chose to research around traditional architecture, and this is why we have the picture of the Pureido or Churrata behind, because they built it as part of this initiative. And handicrafts, of course, which is very related to a particular way of approaching material culture. And what we saw during this process of local research is how this knowledge was impacting nutrition processes by being able to bring traditional seeds and traditional foods into the table, gender roles, economy, and health. So here we're seeing how ICH is both useful and relevant. Of course, this became a challenge when the pandemic started. So we had to find quick ways of working and continuing supporting these local researchers from the distance. In this place, there's no phone coverage, there's no Wi-Fi. So we had to find ways when these people came to places where we could talk. We shared methodologies, they shared with us their most recent fundings, we had discussions. So it has been an important process of continuing the support of local research from the distance. And this has resulted, of course, in the development of new methodologies. Second, the importance of building bridges. So this has been a transversal approach of our work in building bridges between indigenous communities and non-indigenous groups of people, most important, or not most important, but including, for example, governmental organizations in the case of health. So how to include indigenous knowledge and indigenous worldviews in the health system for better. Also in terms of education, in processes of lands rights recognition, and as well in education. In this case of the pandemic, the topic around tourism has turned into a very important one. And I wanted to share a very important news is that we formulated or we designed a nature and cultural tourism proposal that was initiated by the community, the Pierrot community, and we applied to a contest that we won 2 weeks ago so that this community can strengthen their tourism as a way of reactivating their economy. So this implies developing the touristic product that includes important elements of ICH, of how they want to share their traditional food, what they want to share about the way of managing their territory. And the idea is to work on this process for 1 year, and this combines with the process that has been happening accompanied by the British Council. And these people are very happy in terms of, okay, there have been some tough months because fishing tourism has had to stop because of the pandemic. We're not receiving tourists at the moment, but it has become an opportunity for the Pierrot people to think about this other type of tourism they would like to develop. So it's not only about tourists coming to fish in the rivers and then go back to the city, but it is a tourism that is based and values and it aims to recognize their cultural practices, their ways of managing the territory, the environmental impact that they have in terms of looking for biodiversity conservation. And the third point is accompanying the Pierrot's own education processes. So we have been doing this for years, both in the formal and the informal context of education. So I have included this picture, which is an aerial photography of the same Churwata and Pureido, the traditional building as a space of knowledge transmission. And in terms of COVID, this has also been an important process as an NGO. So when we wanted to share lots of information about COVID, how does it work, how to prevent, how to take care of people, traditional language became a very important item. So we were able to work with translators and to bring all this information in Pierrot language to the people. So this allows the continuing the transmission of knowledge in their own language. And also we have started a new project that is supported by the Ministry of Culture here in Colombia of being able to share the handicrafts and the culture of Pierrot people in a digital platform, aiming to strengthen education systems, education as well towards the outside, not only within indigenous Pierrot people, but also with non-indigenous people. So to finish this presentation, I would like to emphasize how we have aimed for slow and long-term processes that prioritize listening, intending to understand the world from an indigenous perspective. We remain open to keep learning and sharing, wanting to be part of a larger global movement, committed with learning from those groups that have transmitted through generations ways of living that embrace a responsible management of ecosystems, being conscious of their own well-being, as well as of the global population as a whole. And of course, in the midst of this pandemic, these people bring or share with us examples of how to be resilient and finding new ways of working. And specifically with the example of the new nature and cultural tourism project that we have started with them. So thank you very much, and happy to continue listening from the rest of participants.
Thank you very much, Carolina. Now, we need to move from Latin America to Asian area. The second presenter is coming from Hong Kong, Mr. Kai-kwong Choi. Her presentation is a holistic development modules of community-based intangible cultural heritage of Yuen district in Hong Kong. Kai-kwong Choi is a project collaborator in the Life Encouraging Fund. His area of expertise are ICH education and promotion in Hong Kong, mainland China, and Taiwan. Floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me clearly? First of all, I would like to express my sincere thanks to the organizer for letting me to present in this conference and exchange view with other presenters. I'm Mr. Choi from Hong Kong. My topic today is a holistic development model of community-based ICH of Yuen district in Hong Kong of China. First of all, I would like to show you this Hong Kong map. There are 18 administrative districts in Hong Kong, and the Yuen district is shown on number 9, which is near the border with China, and is a new territory of the whole Hong Kong. Unlike the downtown here, near the border means that richer with ICH. This is a coastal map of Yuen district. From the low-rise house, there are villages, and the green belt with the green belt. That means this area with richness in ICH. Yuen Community Intangible Cultural Development Project is a proposal of the Life Encouraging Fund, a non-governmental organization based in the Yuen district. This pilot project is an example of an NGO working for community-based ICH education and transmission with a holistic development model. It covers all 5 domains of ICH in the district, with priority to element on the representative list for development as a whole. From this chart, you can see on the left hand side, there are 5 domains prescribed in the convention, and the pendant and the corresponding pendant activity for each domain is on the left hand side of this chart. I would introduce them one by one.
Mr. Kai-kwong Choi,
Yeah.
excuse me, please do the screen share of your PPT.
Oh,
We cannot see any. Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Can I see this now?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, sorry. Okay, let me continue. The first domain is oral traditional and expression. The corresponding activities is Whitehall dialect interactive classroom. The Whitehall dialect is declining even in villages. The NGO facility native villagers to conduct dialect courses using vocabulary taught about daily villagers' life. The content is focused on the traditional ritual and practice of villagers. Smaller class size encourage participants to interact by speaking with one another. Classes are conducted in a village's school on weekends to encourage the learning environment. The second domain is performing arts. The corresponding activities is Cantonese opera demonstration performance. Cantonese opera was inscribed onto the UNESCO representative list of the Intangible Cultural Heritage of Humanities. The NGO organized troops for a series of demonstration performance with guided lessons and interactive activities in Yuen theaters for participants to enhance their knowledge of the Cantonese opera and train them to appreciate this traditional art form. The organizer expects the participant to become regular patron of the opera, supporting the art through ticket sales in the long run. The third domain is social practice, rituals, and festive events. The corresponding activities are on-site festival and rituals guided tours. The villagers in Yuen preserve a number of festivals and rituals, such as lantern lighting ritual, spring ancestral worship, Empress of Heaven Festival, and Yuen Gold Festival. The guided tours are led by Fort Lodge experts to interact with organizers of this event on site. This helps the residents, especially young people living in urban areas, to learn more about the outer villages and their tradition, with an aim to narrow the urban-rural gap and strengthen the sense of belonging for the whole districts. The fourth domain is knowledge and practice concerning nature and the universe. The corresponding activities is on-site making of herbal teas. There is a Chinese herbal medicine garden in Yuen district, where over 1,000 herbs are planted. Chinese medicine practitioners introduce the herbs to participants and guide them to choose the right combination of herbs for teas based on the season. After attending these activities, participants are expected to know how to buy the herbs from medical shops and make herbal teas on their own. The fifth domain is traditional craftsmanship. The corresponding activities are paper crafting technical workshops. A paper crafting master in Yuen lead a series of workshops to teach the technique. Throughout the Lunar New Year, the hand-on craft making includes an ancestor lantern for Chinese New Year, just shown on the slide. And also for the Empress of Heaven Festival, there will be a flower cutting. And for the Yuen Gold Festival, face tapping and painting of the Gold Master will be held. From those workshops, potential apprentices for further training are expected to be found for the craftsmanship. Being the project holder, the NGO maintains a Facebook page to post announcement of these activities and other ICH news of Yunnan districts. This online platform fosters communication between ICH barrier organizations, and other district stakeholders for the collaborative development of ICH. During the project implementation, ICH illustration with text description is produced one by one for advertisement of the corresponding activities. In the end, a guide booklet with an illustration map of ICH element in Yunnan districts is published for the residents of and the travelers to Hong Kong for self-guided tour. Apart from free hard copy, electronic copy in PDF format is available on the internet for wider promotion. With the above package, the ICH integrates various ICH resources, empower ICH barrier and barrier organizations, and foster interaction between residents and ICH barrier for sustainable development of ICH in the Yunnan districts. Being empowered by the NGO, ICH barrier and barrier organization would continue transmission on their own with more participation from the residents in the same districts. This holistic development model of community-based ICH would be a valuable reference for other districts in Hong Kong, as well as other regions and countries. That's all my presentation. Thank you for listening and bear with me.
Thank you very much for your presentation. It's a really holistic approach. It's like a mega event. You include everything. Because of your cooperation, we finally catching up the time schedule. So now we are moving to Africa continent, Zimbabwe. So I'd like to invite Mr. Allington Ndlovu for his presentation on Indigenous knowledge system of Zimbabwe. Allington Ndlovu is the program officer and is responsible for designing and facilitating ICH-related programs and projects in Metabele land at Amagugu International Health Center. Allington, floor is yours. Please turn on the mic.
All right, thank you. My name is Allington Ndlovu from Africa. I'm working for the organization called Amagugu International.
Allington, could you raise the voice? Or it raise the voice. Right.
Okay. That's right. Can everyone hear me? Can you all hear me?
Good.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Allington Ndlovu, and I'm from Africa. I'm working for Amagugu International Heritage Center. So I'm going to take you through a presentation about indigenous knowledge systems. And my topic is indigenous knowledge systems as a vector in combating COVID-19. I'm trying to share the screen right here. Just a moment, please. Just a moment. Our topic is indigenous knowledge systems as a vector in combating COVID-19. COVID-19. Right. I'm trying to do the little magic here so that everyone is aware. All right, thank you. So we are going to start by the definition of some key terms so that we move together in this presentation. COVID-19 is coronavirus 2019, and to combat is to battle, to fight. It's a struggle for victory. And a vector is a course towards a selected point. It's a course towards a selected point. And traditional medicine. Traditional medicine, we're talking about traditional medicine in the sum of for total knowledge of practices that enables diagnosing, preventing, and eliminating a physical, mental, or social disease which relies on IKS experience. Right. So our introduction, Malkia, cited by Hyung in 2007, defined indigenous knowledge systems as to what indigenous people know and do, and what they have known and done for generations. Practices that evolved through trial and error and proved flexible enough to cope with change. Now, if we take this as our working definition, then it becomes easy for us to understand that since time immemorial, people have always resorted to their indigenous knowledge systems for survival, and these are living proof of humankind's resilience. With their indigenous knowledge systems, they've survived invasions, they've survived pandemics, they've survived outbreaks for centuries. And at this point in time, indigenous knowledge systems may still be used as a vector in combating a COVID-19 pandemic. Now, thanks to the Chinese teas, Madagascar's herbal remedies, the sub-Saharan medicinal plants, organic agriculture, traditional diets, and relying on the advices from the elders of the communities. Now, one can submit that indigenous knowledge systems, including modern clinical interventions, can indeed help fight COVID-19 and improve food security that has been shaken all over the world to fight COVID-19. Now, you'll discover that indigenous people can resort to hot water bath therapy, which is ukufuta in the isiNdebele Zimbabwean language, which is in Africa. That automatically kills the virus in one's windpipe. They can also adapt to indigenous food preservation methods in order to sustain consumption of food and cultivate their resilience when there is lack of food security. The Agenda 21 of the UNCED conference emphasized on the need for governments to work towards incorporating indigenous knowledge systems into contemporary socio-economic development programs in order to attain sustainable development. That is according to Helvetas 2011. Now, some of the indigenous ways of knowing that can be incorporated in extenuating or battling COVID-19 will be talked about as the presentation unfolds. Right, you'll discover that there are quite a number of aspects that constitute indigenous knowledge systems, and one of those components is the use of language. The use of language is one of the most important components of indigenous knowledge systems, and one of the pivotal aspects of dismantling and eliminating a threat or a crisis is understanding it, knowing what it is, its causes, its limitations, and delimitations. And in most cases, this is usually best understood in the people's native languages. So we are talking about communication. And the World Health Organization proposed that Africa especially have relatively weak health systems, proactive measures to prevent the spread. Therefore, to contain and to eliminate the spread of the virus will be critical. Thus, indigenous people can turn to their indigenous knowledge, and countries should step up campaigns to educate the general public on best practices. This can be achieved through using people's native language to ensure the effectiveness of certain campaigns that are set up by governments across the globe. Now, the information on flyers used should be translated to guarantee maximum coverage. Some of the reading materials and media content that is meant to help and equip members of the public does not serve its maximum purpose, and it is delivered to the wrong audience. So now we are saying that through IKS, there is need for people to understand the messages that are conveyed by the World Health Organizations. And all these messages, they come in English language, but we are having over 1,000 different native people in the world. So the translation part comes into play, whereby we translate all those messages, the preventive measures on how to stay safe. They have to be translated to the native languages so that the messages or the campaigns are effective and they reach the intended audiences. Right. And the second aspect of IKS in combating COVID-19 is incorporating indigenous knowledge systems in agriculture to combat COVID-19 and ensure food security. Now, several indigenous people from different regions have identified hunger as the main effect of COVID-19 crisis. Food shortages are resulting from the combined effects of isolation, remoteness, the lockdown, the disruption of the food value trade chains, and the suspension of income-generating activities. Therefore, in as much as the world is devising methods and means to cure and prevent the spread of the virus, it should also work tirelessly in handling the negative effects that befall communities due to this crisis. And we're talking of hunger. Now, indigenous people should work towards incorporating indigenous knowledge systems related to agriculture in battling COVID-19. For instance, they can adapt to climate change and explore their resilience skills in farming, drought-resistant crops, and those that are quick to ripe like cowpeas. And you also discover that from indigenous knowledge systems form a basis for community-level decision-making in areas pertaining food security, human health, more importantly, the use of natural resources in battling this novel coronavirus. Local communities can also resort to indigenous food preservation methods to prevent their food stock from getting spoiled and to sustain consumption of food. Now, a wise man once said, growing your own food is like printing your own money. So perhaps by plowing their own food, they may counter economic challenges at household level and ensure food security. Their traditional farming and food preservation could be linked with their current resilience skills and adopt a concept of modernizing tradition and traditionalizing modernity. That is bridging the gap. Right. Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations says that COVID-19 socio-economic impacts have affected indigenous people across the world differently. Those who rely on their indigenous food systems and have adopted traditional lockdown practices are coping better than other communities who rely heavily on the market for their food needs. In Nigeria, for example, indigenous methods of weather forecasting are used by farmers to complement crop planning activities. Another important aspect of indigenous knowledge systems is the medicinal aspect of indigenous knowledge systems. It is very important for us to understand that when we talk about indigenous knowledge systems, it's incomplete if we leave out the issue of medicinal aspects. Now, Western science is increasingly recognizing the value of indigenous knowledge systems and is collaborating with communities to incorporate their knowledge in related projects, and industries reveal how much IKS should be given enough platform to combat COVID-19 and all effects that affect societies, economies, and health systems. Now, throughout history, traditional medicine has been a source of medicinal treatment for diseases such as malaria. And in May 26, 2020, there's a guy from Harare in Zimbabwe, in Africa, by the name Kumbirai Nongo. He wrote an article on the similar subject. And he stated that Madagascar has attracted global attention after announcing in April in 2020 that it has a it has the herbal remedy for the coronavirus. Now you'll discover that Madagascar has been discussed from the continental level, regional level, and global level by claiming to have a remedy for this coronavirus. Right, you'll discover that also unfazed by the international criticism by scientific evidence was lacking. Now the president of Madagascar, Andry Rajoelina, launched COVID Organics, the herbal remedy that he claimed could prevent and cure the virus. In court, he said this herbal tea gives results in 7 days. He said to choruses of disapproval from health experts and pharmaceutical companies from the usually dominant industrialized nations and curiosity from other African leaders aware that the northern companies often find a patent medicine that originate in Africa with little benefit to the continent. As we continue, now according to the Malagasy Institute of Applied Research, this is the organization that developed the beverage, which the president claimed to be curing the virus in 7 days. So they stated that the remedy consisted of a number of indigenous herbs, including the one called Artemisia annua, which is a plant with proven efficacy for malaria treatment. And there are figures from the African Center for Disease Control, the CDC, which show that as of 10 May, Madagascar had one of the highest COVID-19 recovery rates on the continent. And this is what Kumbirai Nongo listed as the statistics from the CDC. Equatorial Guinea, as of 10 May, had 439 COVID-19 cases and 4 deaths, and became the first African country to receive this product from Madagascar on 30 April. And the consignment contained 11,500 packets of COVID-19 organics weighing 1.5 tons. Niger also with 821 COVID-19 cases and 49 fatalities as of 10 May, took delivery from Malagasy product. A health ministry official from Niger said the consignment contained enough product to treat 900 people. Also, the Senegalese President Macky Sall commended Madagascar for its efforts in the search for therapeutic solutions, which Senegal is following with interest. In the United Republic of Tanzania, President John Magufuli announced plans to import the product for use by the locals. I have been in talks with Madagascar. They say they have discovered the medicine for COVID-19. We will send a plane to bring the medicine so that Tanzanians can also benefit from it, he said. Other countries that have received the Malagasy remedy include the Republic of Congo and Guinea-Bissau. So that's one of the most important aspects that we have to take note. So this is a list of some of the medicinal plants that are found in sub-Saharan Africa that were listed by Kindamba in 2003. This is the list. So we do have Artemisia herb there. We do have the Aloe-Forex, the Acacia Senegal, the Cyclopea genistoides, the Momotica charentina. So these are some of the herbs that are used in sub-Saharan Africa. And this is not to suggest that these are the only ones. So this is just the tip of an iceberg. There are more of these. Right. So with regards to the above, there is still paucity of clinical evidence to show that they are effective and safe for humans. We have to take note of this point. Without this information, users of traditional medicinal plants in Africa and elsewhere remain skeptical about the value of such therapies. This denies people the freedom to choose plants that are potentially less costly and more accessible to everyone. And another issue concerning the use of botanical remedies is the need to understand the safety of these therapies. For these reasons, information about efficacy and safety of traditional medicine is urgently required. Another most important part of indigenous systems is traditional knowledge and practices. Now, indigenous people have been using their traditional knowledge and practices to find solutions to the challenges the challenges the pandemic is bringing to them. As they have done for centuries, the communities continue to adapt to change while maintaining their cultures and traditions. Siambombe and Mutale in 2018, they submitted in their article that the indigenous knowledge helped the Batonga people, which is in Zimbabwe, northern Zimbabwe, to come up with the means to cope with the effects of disasters such as starvation by farming in the valleys and food and floodplains, storing excess food and praying to their gods to bring more rain to control the pests. In the face of the widespread of innovation and technological advancements, traditional knowledge systems is on the downward trajectory despite its value in community development discourse. That was according to Siambombe and Mutale. To continue with that point, so these examples as well as other traditional practices of solidarity, they display the reciprocity and mutualism with these food security and members. Right, so in conclusion, it is indeed a truism that indigenous knowledge systems can be used as a vector in combating COVID-19, as stated in the presentation above. It is important to understand what IKS means to different people and what components constitute indigenous knowledge systems. Contextually, indigenous knowledge system refers to old long-standing traditions and practices which have a significant contribution to modern resilience skills, technology, and medicine, having led to discovery of hundreds of new drugs. In this case, indigenous knowledge system was analyzed closely to understand its historicity and the immense contemporary contribution in fighting pandemics. Now we are talking about the use of language, which is linguistics, in order to convey proper messages to different native groups in the world. We are talking about the use of medicinal aspects of IKS. We are talking of traditional practices which bring people together in solidarity and suggest uniform traditional interventions for ensuring food security and fighting the effects of COVID-19. We talk of organic agriculture, indigenous-based weather forecasting, IKS-based food production, preservation, and storage. Needless to say, what remains critical is the fact that indigenous knowledge system is facing major threats as it is passed down by word of mouth from generation to generation, and the reliable custodians are the elderly who may die with this vast knowledge. Another threat is that there is still reticence in the use of IKS, which is considered by many to be anecdotal and not scientific. However, in conclusion, it is imperative, therefore, that without delay, IKS need to be protected, documented, studied, modified if necessary, then widely disseminated to promote development and complement public health facilities. Thank you, Siabonga. This was prepared by Allington.
Thank you, Mr. Allington.
Thank you very much.
It's nice. I learned new knowledge from you. Thank you very much. Next presenter, I'd like to invite Mr. Dibya Borah, whose presentation on ARHI's activities related to dyeing tradition in India. As a president of ARHI, Dibya Borah is working on archiving, documentation, and safeguarding of intangible cultural heritage in India. His expertise is India's indigenous knowledge system. Borah?
Hello.
Microphone is yours. Okay.
I congratulate and I welcome all of the participants and especially the organizations, ICHCAP, for giving us this opportunity to present our working. My presentation title would be Enlivening Dyeing Tradition and ICH, the initiative of ARHI in the northeast of India. So basically, before giving to I just want to give the introduction of our organization. This ARHI, ARHI, it means example. Example in our local language, that means an example. So basically, it's a collection of indigenous cultural activities of this region. So it is completely dedicated to archiving, documentation, and preservation of the cultural heritage of whole of the northeast part of India. And our logo, I could have better show it in presentation, is itself a traditional artwork of state of the Assam. Before going to give the full presentation, I just want to give an overview of the area we are working in India. In India, we are working in northeastern parts of India, which is very much far from the mainstream India. Yes. Thank you so much. Can you go to the fourth number state? Fourth. Yes. Yes, fourth. Can you proceed? Fourth number. Yes, this logo represents. Yeah. This is the establishment. This logo represents one traditional artwork. That is one of the ICH of this region, artwork of the area. Then, yes. This is some of the photographs in its establishment day. Yes. The next slide. Yeah, so this is the overview of the operational India. This is the northeast part of India. This comprises of 8 states: Assam, Arunachal, Meghalaya, Tripura, Mizoram, Manipur, Nagaland, and Sikkim. And this is very far from the mainstream India. And we are more closely with the southeast part of the Southeast Asian nations. Next slide, please. Yeah. So Northeast India is just giving introduction. It's a numerous, diverse indigenous tribe. A lot of Indian tribes, more than 300 tribes and sub-tribes are living here. And the cultural practice are very high. And it is a really representative of ICS because all tribes are very diverse. And there's no similarity, but still they are united because all cultural practices are different from other tribes. And interestingly, more than 200 languages in this region itself. Okay. So this is one of the presentations that I want to show. Then I come to the intangible cultural heritage part. That means because this region is very much rich in the intangible cultural heritage ICH, but this ICH is under threat of extinction because there are many factors can be attributed to the threat of extinction. One another part of the so-called modernization, then the religious conversion, then socio-economic condition is also one of the part. And most importantly, the ICH practitioners faces loss of livelihood because of this extinction. And that's why the transmission process of knowledge, that the word of mouth that comes from generations to generations is getting restricted. So new generation of child, the new generation of these people have no idea of what their ancestors' culture is and what their culture is. And equally, there are alarmingly loss of indigenous languages because out of India's 70% languages are here only in this part only, and there are almost every day we lost a language here because of this reason. So this is another one of the reasons, the ICH and other trait of extinction. Yeah, next slide. So what is our intervention as an organization in safeguarding ICH? We are established in 2008. So mainly we do workshops for the children, workshops for the young generations, so that they can be taught these dances, these special cultural expressions, and the various form of this, which are actually getting day by day, disappearing from this thing. Next slide. Next slide is a video. Can you play it? Okay, not playing it. Okay. We can move. Yeah. So we do research and documentation whichever ICH in danger of extinction, and within our state, which is Assam, it itself has a more than 50 tribes. So we do research and documentation. Next slide, please. Then we have language revitalization project going on. So yeah, can I have this? Yeah, can I have the previous slide, please? Yes. So basically, we do language revitalization process and language revitalization training for the children who are not learning these languages. So in Assam, we have done in case of the Tiwa tribe, which language is also find mention in this UNESCO's endangered language list. So we do that. Then we have some folk tales, which we publish some folk tales of Patkai Hill area involving 11 tribes. Yes, next slide, please. Yeah, then the most important thing is the document publication of traditional medicine. Traditional medicine also now it is in the context of COVID, it is getting very much popular and getting relevant because whenever this comes, this community, developing communities resilience against traditional medicines comes into play. So we have already documented 16 types of traditional medicine. Yeah, next slide, please. Then we have documented birth rituals of 20 tribes because as this modern system has came into, so traditional birth rituals of these tribes have become slowly getting extinct. Yeah, next slide. Then some of the tribes like Taipake tribes, which have been very less numerous type, like 200, 300 people, 4,000, 5,000 people. So we do documentation of their lifestyle. Yes, next slide, please. Then we do dying art, we support and we revitalize the art system or art and craft system of this region, which are getting slow, dying slowly. Yeah, next slide. So coming into the this recent topic, this is which also the title of the topic also, that is from 2019, we do a comprehensive project on dying tradition of this region. So in the 2019, we have started a project called In the Quest of Lost Colors, Revitalization of Natural Dying Tradition of Karbi Tribe. So basically this project aims at revival of dying tradition of Karbi Tribe. So basically what happens, I just want to give a overall, because the Northeastern region, all those tribes have their own natural dying tradition, which are actually getting extinct nowadays. So actually these processes start just right from the colonization of British. When British colonization came, the synthetic color came into play. So naturally the market has been taken over by this synthetic dye. So natural dyeing system is completely getting extinct from this. So now this revitalization, we focus on right from one tribe, this Karbi tribe. So Karbi tribe have a very majestic tradition of dyeing, which is excellent part of their textile tradition. Yeah, because they possess the scientific knowledge of natural color, excellent preference to dye, which is very eco-friendly. But the traditional is, as I mentioned, is on the verge of extinction because new generation weavers are completely ignorant of it. Only a few elders, that is, you can number it 2 or 3 elders are left who possess the knowledge of dyeing. So, so before going to the dyeing tradition, it is one of the important component of the textile tradition, because textile tradition is the blood of their cultural life, because they use still the traditional fly subtle wooden loom, which is called also backstrip looms. Traditionally the Karbi use 3 colors, the white, indigo, black and red, and most popular color is Cebu, that is the dark blue, and that is extracted from indigo plant leaves. So basically, these are some of the photographs from our work. It's a revitalization effort of this dyeing tradition. Yes, yeah, yes. There's some of the photographs. Yes. So this is now we have published a national handbook. So that the knowledge is permanently restored and anybody can learn this technique. So National Dying Tradition of Karbi Tribe, this is a complete handbook we have published, and this has been made possible from support and donation from many other foreign countries. I mean, and our well-wishers. Yes. This is another picture. So then we'll have next slide. We have this. These are the finished naturally dyed products. These are really has to be conserved. And then the dyeing tradition actually. How ICH is connected to dyeing tradition, that is also very much important because the complete textile tradition is connected with observation different cultural practices. Each stage of dyeing has its own rituals and folk songs. I mean, instead of dyeing also has a lot of folk songs and a lot of other cultural expressions which are not ever seen. So from thread making from cotton to dyeing of the thread also, each stage has their own folk songs. Yes. So in Karbi folk society, especially it comes whenever we are the tribe we are talking about, the Karbi folk society, the creation songs of ballads are known as the Keplang. The creation songs, I mean the ballads. So it's called the Keplang. So this creation song tells how the world was formed, how the things came to be, and the story behind everything of this world, how everything came to be. So it's called Keplang. Fellow Keplang is the folk songs that are especially associated with origin of cotton and uses of their uses in the society. So it narrates beginning of the weaving in Karbi society. So what actually Fellow Keplang narrates? It narrates a story of origin of cotton through its three parts. So I just want to give a small example of this story. According to the story, our friend went for fishing in Aukepu, that is traditional fishing festival. Though nobody could catch a single fish in the community fishing festival, the boy could able to catch a special fish which was very big in size. Once he cut the stomach of the fish for cooking, he found a lot of seeds inside the stomach. Then the god came into his dream and told them that these seeds, to plant these seeds. Once he planted these seeds, then this cotton, then it came out that it was a plant of cotton. Then again God came to him, then how weaving to be done from cotton. This is I'm just giving a briefing of this, how origin of that came up. The Fellow Keplang is sung during thread spinning process. Once before it is just before the dyeing. It is just before the dyeing of the coloring of the threads, then it has been sung. And it is sung in three parts, especially in ballad format, describing the whole of the story. So next slide will show some of the photographs where it is been sung like this. And sorry, this video will not play because of some technical reasons. Yeah. Then the COVID outbreak and impact on ICH. So basically, whatever this outbreak has then impact on our ICH in this region. So most prominently, this indigenous population of this region is highly affected due to restriction of lockdown. So no public performance of ICH are allowed, and most severely, and who gave the severe maximum blow is ICH practitioners like folk singer, craftsman, weaver, folk musician. Then ICH practitioners have this unprecedented livelihood loss, and many of them has already shifted to other odds for survival. Then this is the crisis, and just I want to discuss what is the crisis versus opportunities. What the crisis has brought the opportunities. The challenges definitely poses to our preservation efforts and safeguarding. But this crisis has brought another host of opportunities as well. First opportunity is the devising a new model of approach and possibilities towards safeguarding of ICH. Then another thing is in isolation imposed by lockdown, the mainstream indigenous communities, who have been detribalized, who have been mainstream, they also have realized the importance of ICH, and they know that they should preserve. So at community level, we have seen a lot of changes in their attitude and in their behavior because of this isolation also, because isolation also gave them opportunity to think. Yes. Then another thing came to fore, then community immunity. So in India, government has given importance to boosting of the immunity. So how community immunity can be boosted? So this has bring back importance of traditional medicine, because traditional medicine has always has this element of boosting immunity to traditional medicines. So, and this traditional medicine is itself is associated with many ICHs. There are a lot of cultural expression associated with this traditional medicine. So, as I mentioned that many of the ICHs are also traditional medicine, and it has also paved the way for reimagining of relationship between nature and mankind. So, as in indigenous philosophy, it has been apparent that nature and mankind is to be nature-mankind relationship maintained in a particular equilibrium, and it has also paved the way for reimagining of relationship. Then, what new approaches we have taken? What new approaches we have taken in the 1 minute? Yes. New approaches. Yes, what new approaches we have taken, that is post-COVID. We started using web tools and social media. Then we have our already FB page. We already have the official FB page, but it has become more prominent and more lively because of we used to broadcast ICH performances. Then we have done digital empowerment of the communities, because community has to be expert in those digital tools. Then we focus on indigenous youth, because they are already expert in digital tools. So yeah, because youth are expert in usage of new technology, and so indigenous youth as our trust bearers. Then ICS education through information, education, and communication material in digital format. Then integration of ICS education in online school classes. Then we have made alternative livelihood to ICS practitioners. Like it's very common, but we have also done this handmade mask making it in the traditional design, so that they got some support in ICS. Then because there are a lot of here, it's a very popular use of traditional motif in masks. So in the next slide, there will be showing of our FB page. Yeah, this is our FB page, which we started broadcasting ICH performances and Zoom meetings and other kind of things also as well. Yeah, next slide. Yeah. So here we can see that, yeah, this is the digital tool of recording this thing and again the broadcasting. Yeah. Then this is also one of our posters from mask making by indigenous women, so that we can support these people. Yeah, this is also another thing like making. Yeah. So basically, this is our presentation, and this is how I was working in such difficult circumstances. But it is not. I will not say it's not difficult, not that difficult, but it also has paved the way for bringing new approaches, and we could have developed those approaches because it's ICH is already in danger in this region, and there is not such support system from any kind of society. It's like from any corner of the society, and there are very less organizations working in the preservation efforts. There are very numerous organizations working on, and ICH is already in danger. But still, we can say that dying system of this our project, especially the dying system, and the new format that has been devised after this post-COVID, help us. This is help us. I mean, devising new method of new tools and new project tools and new methodologies. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Now,
Yeah,
Mr.
Thank you.
Borah.
Yeah.
When I see all of your presentation, someday I want to open kind of the marketplace, display your product as kind of the fair trade. And then I know that all of you have many information, many knowledge to disseminate to the others. Actually, ICHCAP has some tools. We have a very quality magazine. It's a ICH Korea.
Yes.
Welcome your contribution for the magazine, and also there is a kind of the bi-weekly newsletter, ICH Plus. I will let you know the kind of the website or address of the magazine and then the newsletter. So please share your knowledge with others. Thank you very much, all of you. And then in this session, I found that everyone really touched on indigenous groups, indigenous knowledge commonly. ICH education issue also highly emphasized. Now, we have not enough time. Probably we have just 15 minutes to close this session. So I will ask one question each, turn by turn. So firstly, maybe my first question are going to the Miss Carolina. On your presentation, you mentioned Pialawa's formal and informal way of education. In case of formal education, how Fundación Etnollano has an effect on that, and if there is any changes before and after COVID-19, please share your knowledge with us. Could you turn on your microphone?
Okay. Yes, so in terms of the formal education, Fundación Etnollano has played a main role in terms of building bridges with the indigenous community and the formal education systems of Colombia, specifically talking about the Ministry of Education, in order to have dialogues in terms of how to formalize a curriculum that has the Piaroa indigenous language in it, that has the indigenous traditional knowledge in it, and in order for that to be acknowledged by the Ministry of Education. In terms of before and after COVID, I would say it might be a bit earlier or very soon to identify possible changes in the formal education, but my intuition or my hypothesis of what might start happening are all the challenges in terms of online and virtual education. So during the next month, we're in the process of installing Wi-Fi with the community because they have asked for it. So we envisage this might bring many new opportunities and access in terms of education within the community. So that is something that might be coming.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything more?
No, just a quick note that I knew that for some reason my pictures didn't show up, but only the first page. So we will find a way of perhaps sharing because there are many beautiful pictures of the community. That was all.
I'm looking for your contribution for the ICH Korea magazines, ICHCAP magazine.
For the what, sorry?
Looking for your contribution, your article to the our ICHCAP magazine.
Okay.
Okay. The next question are going to Mr. Choi. Mr. Choi. Your project is really very big scale, dealing all elements of the Yuen communities. Based on what I think, it is almost a government level project. In this sense, why do you think NGO should do this as a catalyst or forerunners? What will be the distinctive strengths of the Life Encouraging Fund? Well, do you have any plan for collaborating with others? Please.
This project is a proposal launched before the COVID, and the COVID distort the funding process. So we are still waiting for to launch it after the COVID. I want to stress that the central role of an NGO is important in this sense, because no single barrier or barrier organization in the districts can hold the holistic project with all NGO elements in the same districts. The central role only can be taken by an NGO. That is one of the main theme of my paper.
Okay, thank you very much. And then next one would be the Allington. You explained the indigenous knowledge system with the language. In the way of food security and the medical aspect, however, for me, it was a little bit harder to get the roles of NGOs. Could you add more or some more explanation of your activities, Allington? Turn on the mic, please. Turn on the microphone. Yes.
Okay, so come again with the question.
Your question. Actually, the food security, well, some kind of the things is a very big issue. So might be not easy for the just NGO can cope with those kind of challenges. So do you have any other ideas? How can you approach those kind of the big agenda?
All right, thank you very much. I think one of the most important things to take into consideration is the fact that different communities across the globe, we have different methods of coping with outbreaks and pandemics and invasions. And they have their own unique indigenous knowledge systems that they happen to use as solutions to these problems. So I think the most important thing is for them to understand the nature of the problem that is facing them, as you are talking about food security. So it takes the whole community as a group to understand that we are facing a challenge and there is need for us to come together with the knowledge that we have to put together the young ones and the elderly as to bridge the gap between the elderly and the young ones, the youth and the old, so that they impart that knowledge from the elderly to the young ones, so that they also continue revamping or revitalizing some of these indigenous knowledge system components, which can help them to combat these problems. And for example, I talked about indigenous-based knowledge system weather forecasting. If we want to fight this hunger problem or food security problems, there's a need for people to incorporate both modern methods and indigenous methods together to come up with a comprehensive approach that can solve this global problem. If you talk about agriculture, it's very difficult for people in Africa to have or to harvest big harvests of these exotic plants and crops. So that's why they have to go back to what the elderly used to do, to remember the old ways of planting sorghum, planting millet, and planting something like rapoko. So those are the plants that are drought resistant. So in facing these food shortages, they have to go back. Those can survive even if there's drought, even if there's this isolation, there is this lockdown thing. They have to go back and use the old methods that were used long time back by their ancestors, and also incorporate and maintain. Yeah.
Right, I understand. That's a good way to find the sustainability. Okay, understand. And then the last one are going to the President Borah. On your paper, you analyzed the ARHI's activities with the way of SWOT analysis. It's interesting. My question is, if the COVID-19 situation is prolonged, school system maybe get affected a lot. If then the long-term strategy is needed definitely. If ARHI has some kind of the strategy regarding to that, please let me know.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, here in this region, though it is said that compared to other part of the India, this region has developed a kind of immunity to the COVID-19. So actually, this and we have till now very less cases in the remote regions, and that is the good news for this thing, because already people are very much immune because of their food system, because of their indigenous knowledge system, because of the traditional medicine is practiced for years. And people are really, and this can be a good example to the rest of the world also, that already people are here been immune. There's a very less cases and very less dated. Yes, there are. It is a very kind of challenging kind of ecosystem, and because of government import restrictions have been there. But still, we have a long-term strategy, because the thing is that a lot of thing has come into place also, because now it's become very easier for other, for doing work in traditional medicine. The traditional medicine, the documentation of traditional medicine we have done 20 years before. That time it has no relevance. I mean, we have not find any kind of thing from any quarter. Right now it has become one kind of reality, and we are doing in pamphlets also that take this traditional medicine. They are very easy. Then this other medicines, and they become a resistant, kind of resistant for this thing. So that's why kind of good news. But still, the thing is that the kind of system we have, the way these IC practitioners like the craftsmen, the singer has lost their job, that needs to be taken very seriously, because otherwise there's a lot of problem for them. Because already, as I mentioned, these people have shifted to other jobs. The craftsmen now have no market. These indigenous toys and indigenous things have now no market, because the market has not opened till now yet. So there is an economic problem for these people. So we have done in our way, in a very small way, to cope up with those challenges, even asking government also, and asking administration authorities also to take up proper decision on policy making, especially on policy making. It has need to be changed regarding this thing. And there, I think there has to be kind of policy making, not from the regional level, it has to be from the international level as well. Hello.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we have a kind of the additional 3 minutes. So I'd like to your short comments about this session. If you have any messages to want to share, please turn on your mic.
Hello.
Yeah, hello. I can hear you.
Yeah. So basically, actually, this is a really for opportunity for us. First of all, our region, the northeast part of India, is very much remote, and it is like a very backward region of the northeast India, because of it is. I mentioned that it is a kind of we are landlocked, and our voices are not heard. This session become very fruitful for us, for giving us opportunities as organization or NGO like us that got represented in such an international forum, and we can learn from other experience also. And I have been following all those things, and we can share knowledge, and that is become really fruitful for this. So that is my really fruitful, and we can be in contact. I mean, we could have a very good contact with other NGOs as well, and we can learn from their methods and this thing, and they can also learn from this. Okay, this is my remark. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you much. Any comments from participants who want to share? Okay, so thank you very much for your participation. And then it's a time we wrap up these sessions. Jin-young, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, all the presenters and the Director General. I really appreciate it for all of you for being here for today. We will close the session 1, and we will have a hour and a half break from now on. So please come back to here at 5:30 p.m. Korean Standard Time. Thanks again, and I hope meeting you soon again. Thank you. Good afternoon, or good morning, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 2020 ICH NGO Conference Session 2. My name is Jin-young Seo, Assistant Program Specialist at the International Information and Networking Center for Intangible Cultural Heritage in the Asia-Pacific region under the auspices of UNESCO ICHCAP. Now, I would like to move on to the Session 2 in earnest. The title of the Session 2 is Home Ludens versus Homo Ludens, Changed Feature COVID-19 Brought. Managing Director Ms. Rim Shak from the Syria Trust for Development will serve as a moderator. Before we get started, I'd like to have a little announcement for the public. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them on the YouTube channel chat box for English, and then you can leave the Korean question also onto the Korean YouTube channel. We will have time for a question at the end after the presentation. Without further pause, please welcome today's moderator. Ms. Rim, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ms. Seo. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to some. My name is Rim Sakir. I am the Managing Director of the Living Heritage Program at the Syria Trust for Development in the Syrian Arab Republic. We are a national NGO accredited by UNESCO under the 2003 Convention. And as the representative of the Arab states NGOs in UNESCO's ICH NGO Forum, I am pleased to be moderating Session 2 of ICHCAP's biannual NGO Conference. So let's dive right into it. COVID-19 and its related social distancing has caused a strange atmosphere that has disturbed the course of our lives, and it has caused the cancellation of many cultural and traditional events. The cancellation of these events or festivals has seriously affected people who rely on these celebrations as a means of income through the sale of local traditional products or in providing hospitality services. NGOs working on the safeguarding and promotion of intangible cultural heritage have had to adapt to these circumstances while taking many different considerations into mind. Here to talk about these experiences is our first speaker, an expert in both tangible and intangible heritage. He currently manages the Valencia de la Festa Museum in Algemesí, Spain, and has authored the inscription of the intangible cultural heritage element of the Festival of the Patron Saint of Algemesí to UNESCO's representative list. I welcome the Secretary General of the Intercity Intangible Cultural Network, ICCN, Mr. Julio Nacher, and his esteemed colleague, Mr. Miguel Olivares.
Good afternoon to you all. We are honored to take part in this conference as speakers for the Intercity Cultural Cooperation Network for the Safeguarding of Intangible Heritage, the ICCN, whose secretariat is now located in Algemesí. I am Miguel Olivares, speaking on behalf of Julio Blasco. The ICCN is an international organization of local governments and cultural institutions, which includes 31 states, 29 cities, and 34 associations. Its main objective is the protection of intangible cultural heritage around the world and the promotion of sustainable local development. Today, we will share with you how COVID has affected heritage in 5 different locations: Algemesí, Spain; Gangneung in South Korea; Falkland International Center of Payanur in Kerala, India; Beit Saur in Palestine; and the Vietnamese Women's Museum in Hanoi, Vietnam. This showing now is a sample of the rituals and dances of the festivities of La Madre de Déu de la Salud in Algemesí that were recognized as intangible heritage by UNESCO in 2011. Of our traditions that as humankind adapt and stand. Every year, we call for the design of a poster to announce a feast. This year, the feast was canceled due to COVID, and the poster became an expression of human frailty and a homage to all the people who work and give their lives to keep health and hope. During the lockdown, Algemesí neighbors that take part in the different rituals spontaneously showed their implication and called to be careful and fight the virus and use a mask. This year, the celebration shifted to an online version. This is the online version of one.
Esteu preparats per a fer la primera videomuixaranga de la història? Sí! Vinga, pues, que comence la música!
En la història de la seva festa gran. Avui hauria d'haver començat la primera de les 3 processons en què s'alcen les muixerangues en honor a la Mare de Déu de la Salut, però enguany la pandèmia ha suspès la majoria de les celebracions, una situació que deixa un impacte emocional molt gran entre la població.
De la muixeranga no hi haurà ni rastre enguany, ni tampoc dels bastonets, tornejants i tots els balls que formen part d'esta tradició que congrega milers de persones. La música demà tampoc sonarà al poble.
És una decepció, no? Perquè sempre tenim moltíssima activitat en tots aquests dies, que si cercaviles, assajos.
L'impacte emocional de la suspensió de la festa és enorme, però també l'econòmic per a una ciutat que s'omplia de visitants.
Comencen també tots els balls a assajar per tot el poble, en els balls al carrer, i ja clar, hi ha un moviment impressionant.
A pesar de la suspensió, la tradició s'ha mantingut viva a través de les xarxes socials.
La quantitat de vídeos online que han fet cada un des de casa.
La televisió d'Apunt vol estar al costat del poble d'Algemesí enguany sense festa. Per això, demà de matí oferirà una selecció dels millors moments de la celebració de l'any passat.
We move now to the Gagneum Danoche Festival, that was designated a masterpiece of the oral and tangible heritage of humanity by UNESCO in 2005. The Danoche Festival was also cancelled due to the pandemic and has been reduced to offline celebrations.
江陵端午祭最核心的内容就是一个祭字，也就是祭祀的意思。在新冠肺炎疫情的大背景下呀，很多其他的活动都已经是被取消了，唯独保留下来的就是我身旁现在正在进行的一场祭祀的活动。尽管它被保留下来了，我们看到现场是不允许有观众来进入的，只有当地的转播机构呢是通过直播或者录像的方式呢，把这个活动给它拍摄下来，通过网上或者电视来进行一个播出。우리 대한민국 분들은 탄호의 많은 그들을 이렇게 행사장에서 같이 어울리지 못하는 것에 대단히 아쉬워합니다. 또 전통의 맥도 함께 이어간다는 그러한 어떤 사명감을 한번 갖게 하기 위해서 이 온라인 단오제를 지금 진행하게 됐습니다.
The Danoche Festival has survived various troubles and hard times before, but is still alive today. All heritage linked to ICCN have been active in social media. The test developed by the Global International Center in Hyung, has been remarkable. From India, we receive a different approach on how to tackle the pandemic. This member of the Mabilam community in Kerala has profited the lockdown to recover the crafts used in practice 40 years ago to fix Borah. Sustainable rain. He both keeps tradition alive and forces his neighbors to grow meat.
بيت سحور تحدي واستجيبي للنداء وانبذي من يستهين وانهضي رغم الوباء بيت سحور تحدي واستجيبي للنداء وانبذي من يستهين وانهضي رغم الوباء واطردي من يستكين واستعدي للشفاء أنت
Excuse me?
أنت عنوان الوفاء.
Mr. Nasser, excuse me.
Yes.
Sorry for interrupt. When you turn on the video, could you just say down the volume because we cannot hear your voice when the video is working.
Oh, sorry. I was just telling that there's been in Palestine they have cancelled the March of the Virgin Mary, the Hikaya market, or the traditional marriage activities, such as the henna night or the farewell night. And this cancellation has greatly affected people financially sustained by these cultural events through the sale of local products. Local musicians and cultural programs have tried to broadcast shows and performances on local television in an attempt to keep the atmosphere alive. Finally, the Vietnamese Women's Museum in Hanoi, in Vietnam, has modified its activities in response to the COVID-19 pandemic under the motto, "When visitors cannot come to the museum, we bring the museum to their home." Indeed, the museum has shifted to focus to digital engagement as means of communication and to make exhibitions accessible from home. In short, we may conclude that COVID-19 has had an undeniable economic impact on hospitality activities around museums, festivals, and festivities that represent intangible heritage, and that had been closed or cancelled due to the pandemic. But on the other hand, tradition has played a very useful role along days of lockdown in order to keep alive memories and community identity. New technologies have been very helpful to share and proudly show cultural elements that define us. And in some cases, the need to stop normal life has helped us to recover crafts that connect communities to the past and to nature. Real menaces for intangible heritage, we find, are really more related to social implication, or maybe the lack of institutional support, or even the invasion of foreign expressions due to globalization. But we find that the resilience of the heritage before the pandemic is very severe, is very, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Olivares. It's absolutely beautiful to see all those different festivals and examples from all around the world and how those communities have dealt with the pandemic and their efforts in for their ICH to continue. So the events of 2020 have caught us off guard, and they have forced us to adapt as quickly and as efficiently as we can to the changing landscape around us. Social distancing was and still is enforced, and the best possible solution for cultural and development organizations was to transfer all its activities online. We're told to start planning and adapting to the new normal. But how so when this normal is still vague and unclear? To hear more on this topic, I'd like to present our second speaker for this session, a scholar and social entrepreneur whose work is grounded in social justice. Please welcome the founder of Creative Generation, Mr. Jeffrey Poulin.
Hello and good morning, early morning, almost 4 in the morning, coming to you from Washington, D.C. Thank you to the conference organizers for having me, and I'm thrilled to be sharing our recent research. Today, I'd like to speak a little bit about innovation in arts and cultural education as a subsection of the intangible cultural heritage sector, and the adaptations that have come amid a global pandemic. My name is Jeff M. Poulin, and I am the founder and managing director of Creative Generation, as well as an adjunct professorial lecturer at American University and an adjunct instructor at Carnegie Mellon University in Washington, D.C. and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, respectively. Creative Generation is an international NGO that is dedicated to the development of thriving communities and a more just world. We achieve this through our work inspiring, connecting, and amplifying the work of young creatives who catalyze social transformation in their communities, and those adult allies who are committed to cultivating their creative capabilities. In March and April of the year 2020, we began an inquiry, initially focused on understanding how the educational aspects of the arts and cultural sector were impacted by COVID-19, in hopes to better understand how it may play out and how we may be able to pivot or adapt in support of the next generation. However, as it began to unfold with our inquiry here in the United States, we understood very quickly that there were multiple pandemics at play. The first being a global health crisis, the COVID-19 pandemic, the resulting economic recession. In the United States, there was an increase of violence against Black lives, most commonly at the hands of police, and a political divisiveness in our country as a result of our upcoming election. What resulted from these circumstances was an upending of our policies in communities that shone a light on the widespread inequalities within our systems, exposing the systemic racism and injustice that had been built into our communities' policies for decades. So we came to understand the definition of what really was facing young people as a full burden, to use the term from epidemiologists, a full burden of injustice that was impacting the lives of young people. So our inquiry no longer became about the COVID-19 pandemic, but instead became about understanding how ICH and the more specific arts and cultural education as a component of the work of ICH NGOs to address that full burden facing young people and allow them to continue to thrive within their own development. So we began looking at the subsection of our field known here in the United States as creative youth development, which may be a new term to many of you. It's defined as a long-standing theory of practice, which intentionally integrates positive youth development principles with arts and cultural education. These organizations are non-governmental organizations, nonprofit in nature, that are based in communities, embedded within neighborhoods. They are highly valued by those who are participating in them, young people, caregivers, families, community members, and more, but are largely vulnerable, living paycheck to paycheck, grant to grant. In the initial response to the COVID-19 pandemic, these CYD organizations, Creative Youth Development Organizations, were left behind in the coordinated emergency funds that were given to the arts and cultural sector, which often favored the large brick and mortar cultural institutions like large museums, opera houses, dance companies, and theaters. So as a result, the creative and cultural development of young people were left behind as well, with no financial support when they needed an increased financial support to address that full burden of young people. So we got to work. We met with 47 different programs across the United States, some of which were catalyzed by networks throughout the state of Massachusetts, in the county of San Diego, California, and elsewhere. And we listened to their leaders that were not only the CEOs or chief executives of the organizations, but also volunteer members of their board and young people, youth decision makers in advisory capacities. And we heard a lot of questions, some of which we grouped into 5 different categories that you can see here in the diagram on the left. We asked the question, how are your programs constructing new pathways through the crisis? And what we learned was that there were essentially 3 phases. The first was around initial concern. Can we pay our staff? Are the young people healthy? When will we be able to open our doors? Then next, we heard a second round of questions. How can we collaborate with funders differently to address our changing needs? How can we ensure the health and well-being of our teaching artists, our staff, through self-care and avoid online burnout? And then lastly, we heard long-term questions about thinking about restructuring organizations. How do we increase our programs? How do we equip our organizations in the virtual space for the future? Ultimately, these fell into 5 categories that you see on the right-hand side of your screen, around harnessing internal reflections and insights, building productive collaborations, strengthening program design, improving organizational stability and sustainability, and instigating shared leadership. To better understand this and to look towards the future, we looked towards the scholarship first. We understood that through these questions, organizations were entering an organizational development phase, whether they knew it or not. Whether a cultural festival, out of school time program, or community-based cultural organization, we found that they were moving through what Kurt Lewin would call his freezing, changing, and unfreezing phases of development. As we looked back in time, we noticed that these responses of organizations were consistent regarding this pandemic, the response to the 9/11 terrorist attacks, the 2008 financial collapse, or regional force majeure events like wildfires in the state of California or Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans in 2006. So we wanted to help organizations think differently about their response in a time of crisis, regardless of what their work was. Here, we offer a model that was adapted from Carl Ronke and Alge Alvarado's models that share the comfort, fear, learning, and opportunity zones that help people discuss how they respond in a crisis. For us, listening to these programmatic leaders, we heard first that organizations exist in what we called their comfort zone, which is seen at the center of this diagram. When that comfort zone, or the space where they're most comfortable doing their work, where they excel in their programming, when that area is disrupted by a crisis, for example, like the COVID-19 pandemic, which is represented by the purple line on this diagram, it launches organizations immediately into a fear and uncertainty zone where they're unsure what is next. They don't know necessarily how to address the changing circumstances that they face. Quickly, though, organizations naturally adapt. They gain insight and learning from those changing circumstances as they move through the crisis. Here is where we see the move to online programming, the innovation of changing spaces and health mandates like mask wearing, and so forth. But here is where the paths diverge. Organizations largely make a choice during this insight and learning zone. In some cases, they short circuit. They wrap back around to go back to their comfort zone. Naturally, they are inclined to do what they know how to do best. Others, though, push through that insight and learning zone and inculcate sustained opportunities in their work, where they learn, innovate, and instill that within their regular programmatic needs. This is what we call the opportunity scenario, and where real innovation amid a crisis can occur to address the changing needs of the time and future-proof their intangible cultural heritage work for changing circumstances in the future. In some cases, we found that this was easy and natural to organizations. Others needed serious financial investment or investment of time and people power in order to achieve those goals. Simultaneously, as our inquiry was expanding to that model within the United States, International Arts Education Week was being hosted by UNESCO. We worked with UNESCO to identify a series of good practices, some 40 programs happening around the world, that looked specifically at the innovation within arts and cultural education during the changes of the pandemic. In a review of these programs, we found that over 50% of them changed their practices responding to the pandemic. The other 50% largely put their programming on hold. Of those 50% that innovated, 100% of them relied on digital delivery and internet connections for their work. 1/3 of those that were studied provided additional services for young people, particularly focused on how arts and culture could contribute to the mental health and well-being of the next generation. 40% supported non-traditional educators or at-home educators like parents, caregivers, community elders, and others. These good practices modeled the same type of innovation that we saw in our study of creative youth development programs in the United States, which allows us to draw some conclusions about how intangible cultural heritage and really other types of arts and culture organizations around the world adapted to a crisis. What we ultimately understood is that there was an interdependence between the arts and culture sector and digital delivery through the use of the internet. This creates the health concerns for safe distancing, but also allows for a democratization of learning and knowledge consumption. It allows for young people to participate in intangible cultural heritage programs like the festivals just seen in the preceding dialogue without a need for being physically present. In fact, in many cases, it increased participation for young people in disparate and more rural areas of the regions. However, there is a concern about the digital gap or increased access to computers, other technology, and access to the internet. Second, we must consider how we connect the arts and cultural heritage work to the pressing needs of young people in communities, like their mental and physical well-being. How can arts, culture, and ICH address the mental health and physical well-being of young people, particularly with the rapid increases in diagnosed depression, suicide rates, and other challenges facing youth today. And third, we must consider how organizations can conduct themselves with humility and empower other educators. Checking egos at the door, we must think about the democratization of knowledge sharing and how our ICH NGOs can empower other types of educators beyond our own staffs, like parents, elders, and others in homes and communities, to ensure that young people continue learning through arts and culture, continue engaging with heritage, and continue the dialogues within their communities when we cannot be physically present or gathered together. We offer these considerations as provocations from this work because we are still in the midst of a global pandemic. Can we really draw conclusions? Who knows? But what we learned from our studies in March and April in the United States and May and June looking globally through UNESCO was simply this: we must adapt, we must change. And instead of going back to what we always did well, we must look to those changes for new innovations. Innovations that can be engaged for more democratized learning, increased support for young people and their mental and physical well-being, and a shift in how we engage with communities in their learning about intangible cultural heritage. I thank you for listening to this presentation and welcome an increased dialogue in the future. I can be reached at this email address or through our website or on social media. I thank you very much for listening to this presentation.
Thank you so much, Jeff. You've certainly given us a lot of important issues to think about. I think focusing on the mental health of young people or people in general is more important than ever in the midst of this pandemic. So moving on, as we've heard, integrating ICH in education should be a primary topic for many NGOs and experts. Using formal education to advance the transmission of knowledge and skills related to ICH is something that we see to only have a positive impact on all sides. But is there an existing opposition, or let's say a gap, between the benefits of becoming educated in the contemporary sense and learning about one's own culture? And if so, how should this be dealt with? Our next speaker from the non-profit institution of THAP has contributed towards the educational, cultural and social sectors of Pakistan. Her teaching, research and development initiatives have created an impact, not just at the local community level, but at the international level as well. She is focused on various projects aimed towards the protection and promotion of the cultural heritage of the Kalasha communities in Pakistan. Here to talk about these projects in more depth is Ms. Miza Ubaid.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. I'm really happy and thankful to be given this opportunity to be part of this conference today. My colleague and I will be presenting, but he's also here. We will be talking about our organization and the projects that we are currently engaged in. So I am talking about THAP. THAP is a not-for-profit organization from Pakistan. It is the only UNESCO accredited NGO of Pakistan under the Convention of 2003. We're mostly focused on safeguarding and preservation of tangible and intangible cultural heritage throughout the country. But I will be talking about a particular example today, which is very close to my heart and also quite relevant to the topic here. So it's basically about the Kalasha community. Before moving forward, just a very quick, as she told you, I'm an architect, a cultural heritage consultant, and I work in TAP as a secretary to the Culture Development Program. And I'm also teaching in University, Institute for Art and Culture. My colleague, he's an anthropologist. He is also engaged in the culture development sector of TAP, teaches in ISE. He has diverse publications, and he graduated in 2014 from University of Aberdeen. Before moving forward, I feel it's very important to give an overview of what the Kalasha community is, who these people are, and why what is so important. So the Kalasha community, it's the smallest indigenous community of Pakistan. There are 3,800 left in the world only. Their number is decreasing like anything, and they're facing a number of threats, particularly because, there are a lot of forced conversions. They have threats from the jihadi outfits, religious discrimination. Also, their culture and rituals are looked down by the non-Kalasha communities. And, because of all these particular factors, the youth, they're not really, a lot inclined towards their own culture. Instead, they either by threat or incentives, a lot of them are converting to other religions. So this issue was brought to us, in 2015, when we actually became aware and we wanted to initiate some work in the community. So the main vision has always been, there are three visions that we worked on. First was to strengthen the nexus between culture and sustainable development and safeguarding the Kalasha community's inalienable rights to their culture. The second was to promote national understanding, tolerance, and social cohesion through appreciation of cultural diversity in the country. And third, to promote heritage-based learning in school curriculum. To give you an overview, actually in 2015, when we entered the valleys, we realized that they have a beautiful culture. They have beautiful, their own traditions, practices. Their ICH is very rich. But unfortunately, nothing was noted down, nothing was written down. They had no written language. So, and all of these practices were mostly passed on from, the elders to the young generation. So sometimes when the younger generation was not interested in learning, so a lot was just going on, away with the older generation as they died. So this was a very important step in order, we realized that it was very important to safeguard both their tangible and intangible heritage. The Kalasha community in the valley, they are in the northern area of Pakistan. There are three particular valleys in which the people are situated. They are Bamburat, Rambur, and Birir. And they are in the Chitral district in the north of Pakistan. This is the sketch that I made for some clarification. So, their religion and their customs, they're basically governed by a basic principle, which is Kalasha Dastur. These people believe everything is divided into Anjasta, pure, and Pragata, impure. So just to give you an idea, all the villages are, made, they are basically on the same principle. So the highest areas are the altar and the high pastures, which is like extreme Anjasta. So men can only go there. Women cannot because because of the association of menstruation with them and childbirth. So they cannot go to the Anjasta areas. Dancing areas, temple, and the village where they live, that is an area which is accessible by both men and women. And then as we move down the village, there is a river where women go to take bath, wash their clothes. That's Pragata, accessible by women only. And Bashali, where women go during menstruation and childbirth, they live here. So these are just to give a quick overview of how the landscape is gendered. For landscape for men always appears like this. So these are two highlighted areas where they cannot access. Otherwise, the Bashali and the river. Otherwise, they can pretty much go anywhere. women, when they're not menstruating or during childbirth, they cannot go to the high pastures and the these areas. Otherwise, they can go where pretty much the other places. And this is the third sketch, which is like the highlighted areas are places where women cannot go during menstruation and giving and during childbirth. And men, this is an example. It's a beautiful area. They have, they grow their own crops. They have, a lot of skills. There is beautiful and very rich craft. They they go into weaving, sewing, beadwork, embroidery. They have 4 annual festivals, which is like Joshi, Ochao, Chalmers Full, which is celebrated all through the years. They have dancing, different rituals of drawings, and like Chalmers, which is in December, it's the longest one, which is almost for 22 days. So what happened was, when we went in the area, what the first project was, how we talked to the community, and through their help and participation, realized that community-based inventory was one of the most essential things that had to be carried out in the area. So that was started in 2015, of course, with the consultation of the community and their involvement. They were involved at every level, every step. Then this project was continued. So we got this project. This was by the Canadian embassies, and then the second one, in collaboration with UNESCO. This project was to empower the Kalasha community through safeguarding the intangible cultural heritage. And during that time, the government also approached, and in collaboration with UNESCO, we realized that there was an element which is an ICH element, Suri Jagek, which was in the Kalasha community. This is the traditional astronomical method of developing the calendar, and this is how these people observe the sun and the moon, and the sun dictates every activity that's going to happen throughout the year, like, growing crops, rains, when the festivals have to be celebrated, everything. So this was dying out because only the elders knew it. And the community, wanted this to be preserved and safeguarded. So we worked with the community in collaboration with UNESCO, and it was a huge success because this was, sent for the nomination on, on the UNESCO Earth and Safeguarding list, and the nomination was inscribed. So this is the first independent element from Pakistan which is inscribed on the UNESCO Earth and Safeguarding list, and that is from this community. So throughout this time, from 2015 to 2018 and 17, some of the achievements that we had were we had a joint publication, UNESCO THAV joint publication on the Kalasha culture. We had different topics that were we were trying to explain, their culture in detail. 20 personnel from the local community, they were trained in community-based inventory directly through community, capacity building workshops, and they got to know how, they're going to, work on more. A total of 13 persons have been trained from academia, NGOs, and tourism departments through capacity building workshops. A total of 45 personnel from across the 3 valleys, they were involved in these inventorying process. For example, they were giving interviews, they were involved, and also it was a huge thing for all of us that 45 elements, they have been inventoried and also adopted by the government of Pakistan of the Kalasha community. So while doing all this, so this is just an image of the publication that we had in 2019. And while we worked on all of this, a very recent project that I'm going to talk about is this project, which was like strengthening the resilience of the Kalasha communities through protecting and promoting their cultural heritage. And through this, basic intention was to initiate and to realize how we can have, education, introduce culture into education. So one of the problems in the valleys is that there is only one school which was dedicated to only the Kalasha students and Kalasha teachers. Otherwise, there were all the government schools. And when something like this happens, there is an issue because you see, the government doesn't, they would so the Muslims will not be learning about the Kalasha culture. So it was very difficult for them to, teach their students. So we went to the school, particular school, which is a Kalasha Dur, and we talked to the teachers. They were extremely interested because they knew that they could actually start teaching the students about their heritage and make it part of their curriculum without making it an extra thing, because that way it would be very easy to just gel in, and students, basically the youth, will know about their heritage. This is to give you an overview. So at the end of the in 1 year, what we did was, with the help of the teachers, the Kalasha teachers, throughout this, what we did was, we came up with different worksheets and a booklet, which was, for the students of primary school. And what happened was that this was so during the length of this project, firstly, there was an acknowledgement, knowledge and resilience. This was all taken into consideration. Secondly, the mediums through which this knowledge was passed on from one generation to the other, that was, really appreciated, and we tried to keep it that way. And third, this traditional knowledge, we realized that this must be structurally made an integral part of the ongoing institutionalized educational structure. There was a bilingual educational material which was written, firstly in the Kalasha language by the teachers and the Kalasha people, and then we came to help them to translate that into English, which was produced for the students. As learning about the Kalasha culture through extracurriculars, this has proved, even in the past, very successful. So what we tried to do was, we developed heritage educational worksheets, workbooks, through which students wouldn't feel that they're doing something extra while learning, actually. So and also we realized throughout this project that it's very important to return to the title of the project and focus on the word resilience. Resilience is what the Kalasha have shown to survive in these surroundings for centuries, and this is a need to strengthen their resilience to not merely survive but also thrive as a community in the future. This is to give you an example. So what we did was, it's just an overview of one worksheet. So what we did was, like, for example, it's a general science, it was a subject. We took a story which was a traditional story, how the Kalasha people have found a cure for snake bites. That's through a medicinal plant that they have in the valleys. And there's a story that is told from the elders to the younger students. So we wrote that story, we made some figures, and then there were some questions from the story which were related to science, and then students had they had to do that. So this was part of their science class, and they were also learning about their heritage, their traditional stories. Another example was how fox made snow leopard fall for his intelligence, and how this was also a traditional story, and we made part of this English curriculum, and then the story was narrated, and then questions in the end. Similarly for Urdu, so we tried to cover all the subjects that the students were learning and include them. And this was the book that was made. So it had different topics. Goshnik is like initiation ceremony for the children. Then Gulparik, what happens when a child is born. From that onward, in the lives of a woman and the child till their till death. So we try to cover their culture in a very easy language, in interesting way, with a lot of illustrations that would be very interesting for the students. So through this project, it has been seen that there's regular employment of exclusively Kalasha school teachers in all Kalasha schools. This was very important. This was not being followed. So, some of the outcomes were, and then there was the second point was that use of Kalasha language as the primary medium of instruction in Kalasha schools. Thirdly, offerings and implementing the teaching of the Kalasha language as a subject in all Kalasha schools. Fourthly, we believe that it is important to signify the role of Qazi as inherently connected to the formal education system. So in Kalasha, their culture, Qazi is a person who who has all the knowledge of the practices, and he is supreme. He knows and he teaches. So we tried to bring that into education as well. So he would also be part of some lectures and educational systems. So this was all done. However, during COVID-19, things haven't been going really well for the valleys. Yes, over hundreds of schools have been closed throughout the country, but this impacted nearly half of the world's population. We agree, but indigenous communities the world over, they have suffered from disproportionately high level of disruption in education as compared to the other counterparts in the same country. So we talked to the principal, the head, who was leading this Kalasha school, Kalasha Dur. His name is Bakhtavar Shah. And he told us that, they have tried a lot to start a homeschooling initiative, but that's too little aware. There are a number of problems. Firstly, the parents of the children themselves, they're not really equipped with the teaching, to teach the content that is being taught at the school. Secondly, they're like either the parents are unaware of English or Urdu because they just speak in Kalasha language, whereas the students have to be taught in both these languages, at home, in schools. And furthermore, there is a challenge which was highlighted that there is no reliable internet connection in the three valleys. So even though all these people do have mobile phones, but without internet connectivity, in online classes are a big hassle. So however, yes, but some things were also positive which were highlighted. For example, Suri Jagek, which I mentioned earlier also, which was inscribed. Particularly, that's a practice that students have learned from the village elders, and that is only taught because there is a certain space from where the village elders take the the children and teach them where they're supposed to sit and view the sun. So, I mean, these are small things that cannot be, that have to be practice-based. So, these are some of the other practices. They are, what the elders are trying to teach the younger generation. Similarly, grain storage as well as narrating folk stories, they are being narrated to students in times where they're away from the school. So this also might be seen as a blessing in disguise to teach, one-to-one and, pass these stories from, one generation to the other. So that's all about it. And thank you for the time.
Thank you very much, Nisa, for showing us that example of the Kalasha culture and the project that you worked on, which can definitely be beneficial in NGOs and organizations replicating for other indigenous communities, despite the challenges that COVID-19 is still imposing on that. So, as we've heard just now and before, the universal value of safeguarding our intangible cultural heritage is engaging in a shift to a new method in the midst of this pandemic. While people have been told to stay home and physically isolate, face-to-face activities have been frozen. Organizations have used this as an opportunity to kind of get other work done, develop online methods of implementation and outreach to their communities. But we do face a serious problem, the problem of dealing with communities who don't have digital schools or don't have access to digital infrastructure. How can we still fulfill the values of equality and participation in the presence of an extremely obvious digital divide, especially in developing regions? Here to speak about bridging the digital gap is Dr. Han-hee Ham, who is no stranger to the ICH NGO Forum. Dr. Ham is the director of the Center for Intangible Cultural Studies. She is Professor Emeritus at Chonbuk National University and is now involved in several research projects regarding the safeguarding of intangible cultural heritage, collecting Korea's traditional knowledge system and people's life history. Her recent academic contribution is shown on the editorship of her book, The Understanding of Intangible Cultural Heritage in Korea. Welcome, Dr. Han.
My name is Hani Ham. As Ms. Sakar introduced me, I'm a cultural anthropologist, and also I'm working as a director, CICS, Center for Intangible Cultural Studies. Then I'm very pleased to present the case studies of NGOs in Korea. Okay, let me share the my presentation PowerPoint. Okay, the title of the today's presentation is shifting to online activities, digital divide among the NGOs and ICH communities in Korea. The profound difficulties international ICH community faces during the corona pandemic is truly worrisome. Oftentimes, many of the municipalities of our regions neglect our most dire ICH that needs the foundation for outreaching their respected communities. The cases of Korea bring similar difficulties in reaching out to our communities. Those in the field of performance art were hit the hardest in Korea, as many of our much needed cultural performances were canceled. This meant loss of income, as the previous speaker already indicated, and most importantly, the spot of the public. The cultural related recognitions that fueled the economy of our practices all of a sudden came to a halt with many cancellations to events and the symposiums. In the brink of the corona pandemic prolonged, staying indoors and extinct of large events or festivals have become the norm for the NGOs of Korea. The common factor in dealing with the corona pandemic was for the ICH communities to observe online activities and become fluent in online platforms for the ICH safeguarding. Yet, we are facing a serious problem. ICH communities in Korea are divided into two groups, those having digital skills and money, and those having few. Bridging the digital gap is our challenge.
Sorry, Dr. Ham. Yes, I was just going to change the slide. That's
okay. I'm sorry. Okay. Actually, I'm a director of CICS, among the 4 NGOs in Korea. So we have the association we called UNAC, which is UNESCO accredited NGO association in Korea. In abbreviation is we call UNAC. So I will share the UNAC's experience of COVID-19 with ICH communities. Let me briefly introduce the 4 the NGOs in Korea. The one is CHF, Korea Cultural Heritage Foundation, and the second one is World Martial Arts Union, UMAO, International Masked Arts and Culture Organization, IMACO, and the last one is us. Working with our surrounding networks of ICH bearers and groups and communities to support them throughout the pandemic. Okay. Actually, we have gathered, the UNAC have gathered for the discussion of COVID-19 effects in the online meeting. And then I gathered the data from, the online meetings. And this is what we have discussed. So I will introduce it one by one. Okay, the first one. The first one is the Korea Cultural Heritage Foundation. The usual gathering activities of Korea's NGOs were deterred with many cancellations and delay. The UMAO's martial arts annual performances international symposium in Singapore. Okay, I'm sorry to the UMAO is my presentation. I said later, but okay, the UMA is the first. They canceled the international symposium in Singapore, and so many their activities moved online as the other, the NGOs did. The UNESCO accredited martial arts NGOs were contacted online and had discussions regarding safeguarding of martial arts of their respected regions. UMAO hired people through the Youth Tourism Coordinator project to help with the low income rate in Korea. Many of UMAO's attention now is about inventorying and archiving their records, as well as official development of assistance, we call the ODA, an educational project geared for 2021. Most of activities moving online, as you see, means more time for the NGOs of Korea for capacity building through their previous works and projects. Many books were published throughout this year for many of us. The CHF, the Korea Cultural Heritage Foundation, created a book catalog of their activities. The title, In Search of a Living Heritage, catalogs the CHF's vision and work in the past to present for the cultural heritage of Korea. All this time, the next one is IMACO. All this time, advised from our governments to stay indoors have allowed many of our work to be archived and recorded. This was the case for IMACO, reaching through their international members through SNS, email, and online meetings. IMACO concentrated on archiving their work digitally, as well as creating an online membership for the promotion of masks. Okay, and this is my organization. The spotlight that many ICH communities around the world needed, CICS used the online platform to give the spotlight to the ICH community. The second annual Jeonju, the International Awards for Promoting Intangible Cultural Heritage ceremony was held online. The goal of Jeonju City is to promote Jeonju Awards as an international event, supporting the community, group, and individuals that strive for the best safeguarding practices of ICH. Jeonju City wishes are to select nominees that impresses the whole world with their exemplary expert in the safeguarding practices of ICH. Okay, let me give you like a brief the video clip to you.
By screen sharing and then click the sound sharing.
You can see the my video clip. Hello? No, I'm sorry.
No, we can't see Dr. Han.
Okay, sorry. I don't know why, but anyway, I'm sorry for the,
We just saw it for like a second, but then the screen disappeared again.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I will just skip the, my video clip. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, the Jeonju International Awards for Promoting Intangible Cultural Heritage gave the 3 finalists their deserved recognition as well as prize and plaque from Jeonju City. CICS was the secretariat for Jeonju City and received many applications from international ICH bearers, practitioners, and groups. In the midst of a pandemic, the event gave hope to the finalists and held the online ceremony to promote their ICH safeguarding practices. The cases of UNAC, the UNESCO accredited NGOs of Korea, show our activities under the midst of COVID-19. The corona pandemic becoming long-term is a possibility. As many in our ICH community face difficult tasks of corona-driven society, it was important for UNAC to move forward with the best available solution. UNAC all had many in-house projects, such as cataloging inventory, uploading to a database, and reaching out to our communities. It also became clear that activities of safeguarding ICH would inevitably move to the online setting. The digital divide has resulted in a new phase of conflict and tension among ICH groups, communities, and individuals in Korea, which is not a consequence intended by UNESCO. This issue surely started even before the pandemic, and yet it accelerates during the pandemic. Okay, we will continue to promote the importance of all cultural heritage through different venues and prepare for the changing society. In particular, online activities and platforms are often not available among ICH holders, groups, and communities. Realizing this reality, we are trying to give them a helping hand. One of the GIA Pitch, the award is one of them, actually. The universal value of safeguarding our intangible cultural heritage engages with the shifting to a new method of safeguarding in the midst of pandemic. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, this is
Thank you, Dr. Han. Very interesting. I think that brings us to the end of our presentations for session 2 today. So we have about 15 minutes for discussions and questions. Now, we have been receiving some questions from the public, and so they are open to anyone to answer. So the first question that we have is, there is a huge gap in information capabilities from country to country, or even within the same country. And the gap in information capabilities between NGOs can be very large. One of the important roles of NGOs is solidarity. The question is that if there were any international solidarity initiatives between NGOs within the COVID-19 era, or between NGOs in the same country. Any takers for that question? maybe Mr. Olivares, since we saw different examples from in different countries, different NGOs, can you talk to us a bit about international solidarity?
What
Yeah,
we have what we have noticed mostly is a necessity to share precisely through online. But I think just sharing the heritage, not precisely, is difficult to promote solidarity. You just share information, no? It's the only. We are not used to cope with this sort of situation, and what we have noticed is an interest in sharing, but as for in our case here, what we haven't seen is how members of different rituals and dancing have shown the importance of wearing masks and things of the sort spontaneously. But it's just take care mostly.
Yes, I think COVID-19 is still such a new thing for NGOs and for people in general, and perhaps it has still been difficult for there to be like a large or a noticeable international solidarity movement. But while I have you, Mr. Olivares, I have a different question for you as well. Excuse me, but we saw that a lot of the festivals that you showed us, they moved to an online mode. Which was great to see. But how sustainable really is this online mode of practicing for the communities themselves, considering that they have perhaps lost the economic part or the economic benefit of them holding these festivals like in actual, in their own physical space. There's no more visitors are bringing in incomes to these areas. So how sustainable are online festivals? And do you think you can continue doing them, let's say, for another year or two or even longer than that?
Well, I believe sustainability has to do with the social rooting of heritage. So in our case, it was the Palestinians who mostly made notice about the problems with the income disappearing. No? But well, here the feast has no public support at all. It's just the people of a village that practice after generations their different dances and rituals. So here there's not really an economic problem. But I suppose in other places there might be. What is thing? I believe heritage, the importance of heritage is the transmission from father to children, no? And parents to. So I believe the sustainability of the shows online is directly the same as the sustainability of the same heritage. No? I mean, as long as traditions are kept alive, I suppose they can be showed online apart from their economic, I think the economic stress that I suppose the economic stress is most, in our case at least, is a problem with the hospitality businesses around. And I believe that as long as the roots are firm, the show may go.
The show will go on. Yeah, thanks for answering that. We have a question for Jeff. You showed us a model about organizational development, showing how in a crisis, organizations are forced out of their comfort zone, as you put it. And you spoke of two possible reactions. Organizations will freeze, they'll be forced out of their comfort zone. They will either adapt to the changed circumstances, then go back to that previous comfort zone, or once they're forced out of the comfort zone, they will absorb these new experiences, they will learn, and then use it as an opportunity to kind of change and be renewed and become more resilient. What is the added advantage that organizations who take that second option, what advantage do they have over the organizations that take the first option?
Yes, thank you for that question. And I think I'll address it, but I also would like to add a comment about the previous question about standing in solidarity. And what we found is that solidarity was not enough, that tangible action needed to be taken, particularly by those who had power, that controlled wealth and financial resources, that were in charge of policies and so forth. So government agencies, foundations, large types of investment. Standing in solidarity alone was not okay, because the very nature of people's lives were at stake. As we talked about the mental health and physical well-being of the beneficiaries of these types of programs. So in that same vein, that's what's at stake when it comes to making the decision. One of the things that we know, and I can just speak, I don't have the data on the second set of research that we did with UNESCO, but speaking about what we would call creative youth development programs in the United States, is that there are about 5,000 programs across the country that benefit anywhere between 50 to 500 young people each. So if you do the math on that, we're not looking at a huge percentage of the population. However, during this time, when things were moved online, when programs were democratized, when they were supported by in-home educators or in-community educators versus young people coming to a central location, we found that the impact of those programs was expanded. And so I would surmise that if you would imagine a festival, for example, one of the clients that we work with at Creative Generation is a youth-led cultural festival in Juba, South Sudan. Originally planned for a couple hundred people that would gather in Juba. However, through this, they have taken to providing a platform on the radio to many of the cultural artists that they work with, and the young people are able to do that and reach thousands of people through that process, and they've democratized the experience. So for those organizations that take the second route towards innovation, imagine if you are providing a festival in a city center somewhere with live musicians and dance and so forth. The musicians have to operate as a group to make up the band or the orchestra or however they are performing. But if you've now harnessed the technology of being able to send a video and audio stream of that to a community, that could happen digitally while the people in a different community experience the same thing and still engage with their heritage dances. So we look at a hybrid model to think about how we can use the finite resources that we have when it comes to ICH in our countries, our communities, our societies, to actually spread the wealth, if you will, and democratize the experience beyond just what we always did for sake of doing what was always done.
Thank you. We're getting a lot of questions, so maybe we have time for one more, since most of them seem to be revolving around the digital divide. So again, anyone can jump in with this one. Will future ICT technologies bridge the digital divide or widen it? And what can we do to reduce this divide from widening? Considering that most of the examples that we saw now are all, like, for safeguarding ICH are all online methods. And so if we don't have access to digital technologies, then ICH is in serious danger, is it not? Any volunteers? Maybe Dr. Han?
Yes, digital divide is particularly in the ICH field. It's very serious, I think, because as I see in the field, many like seniors, like old people who has the skills and knowledges, but they don't know how to operate the computers and the other devices. But we are training the youngsters among the group to handle those the digital technologies. So one of our mission to educate, training the kind of new skills to encourage the work continuously. And so I hope that the digital divide, becomes to like a shorten. The gap is shortened in the future. We hope, and then along with that, the NGOs like us. Many NGOs should work hard with the ICH communities, and particularly with all the peoples. And yeah, that's one of our mission, I guess. And then in the future, the gap will reduce, and then also those who have the resources, the money, and the other the skills. Should participate in our our missions. So yeah, that's I have I have a little positive the attitude toward the digital divide. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, well, that's good to hear that we are optimistic about this digital divide becoming more narrow and smaller. So with that, our session is, our discussion is over today. So thank you so much for allowing me to moderate this session. I thoroughly enjoyed the presentations by all the presenters, very well done. And also thank you for the questions that were coming in from the public. And I will hand this back over to Ms. Sia.
Thank you, Ms. Reem. And then thank you for everyone, every presenters and all the moderators. I appreciate you, all of you being here for today. Now, we will close the session 2, actually day 1 of the 2020 ICH NGO Conference. We will meet you all tomorrow at the same time, 2 p.m. Korean Standard Time. Actually, for tomorrow, not only the session 3, but also there will be a plenary discussion. So all the presenters will be online for the final words. Thank you, and hope you see you, all of you, tomorrow again. Have a good rest of the day. Bye.